Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the public hearing for the Planning and Zoning Commission of Town of South Windsor for Tuesday, June 27th, 2023. If everyone would please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Do we have a notice? I'll ask the secretary to read the public notice.
To be published in the Journal Enquirer Friday, June 16th and Thursday, June 22nd, 2023, South Windsor Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that there will be a public hearing on Tuesday, June 27th, 2023 at 7 p.m. in the council chambers of the South Windsor Town Hall to consider the following. Number one, application 23-11P, Industrial Flex Space. Request for site plan approval for 39,850 square feet of flex space contained within multiple buildings on property located at 75 Connecticut Avenue, I-Zone, continued from June 13, 2023. Copies of the application are on file in the office of the town clerk and/or planning department and online at https://www.southwindsorct.gov, Planning Department pages, Planning and Zoning Commission applications. At this hearing, interested persons may be heard, and written comments by the public will be received by mail or email. Persons who require an accommodation can contact staff Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at 860-644-2511, extension 2329. Bart Pasiconis, Chairman, Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Our order of business tonight will be first to hear from the applicant, then we will hear from town staff, then we will hear from members of the public, first those in favor, and then those who have questions or concerns, and then we will hear from commissioners. If anyone has a cell phone, if they could, please put it to vibrate or shut it off. We would appreciate it. And if there are any persons here that want to speak tonight during the public comment, if they could, we should have a sign-up sheet or a sign-in sheet up there. If they could put your name and address and introduce yourself to the commission, that would be appreciated. So at this time, I will call our public hearing applicant, application 23-11P, Industrial Flex Space. Is there someone here to represent the applicant?
It's your last time. Greg McCracken. I'm an attorney at Jacobs Walker Rice and Berry in Manchester. And before we got into the rest of the issues, I just wanted a chance to give a brief presentation on 3 points that came up at the last public hearing. The first one was a claim that the project was for a warehouse distribution center that was precluded by the moratorium under section 1.5 of the zoning regulations. Just wanted to address that. We don't believe this application is for a warehouse distribution center. Certainly would be permitted in the same zone, but we brought the application in under the provision covering plumbing, heating, electrical, mechanical, industrial, and general contracting establishments, which is in table 4.1.1a of the zoning regulations. And we believe that's what the application is for. The fact that some of the space could be used for storage for any of these types of uses permitted doesn't make it a warehouse distribution center. And as you can see from the site plan at the last public hearing, this really isn't configured in a way that would make it even suitable for that type of warehouse distribution center. So that is not the use. We're not subject to the moratorium, but even if somehow we were, the moratorium is over. So it is not a bar to considering and approving this application. The second thing was a conservation easement that was raised, and from the presentation that was given, the thought was it extended 75 feet from some of the boundaries in the parcel based on an instrument that we didn't actually see. DPI's Director of Surveying, Larry Geisler, did look through the copy of the easement, looked at the easement area in detail, and concluded that our property is not subject to the conservation easement and none of the areas within our parcel. There's an old re-subdivision plan, a copy of which I submitted with the town planner, that shows the 75-foot area. And it did burden a portion of what was Lot 8 before the lot was split into the Tribe 9 Carlos Pasta parcel to the north, and then the subject parcel for this application to the south. So when you look at the easement area, it actually ends before it reaches our parcel. The easement is not part of the property that's the subject. There's no reason to depict it under our site plan because we're not burdened by it. And the only thing that really is relevant is the 50-foot buffer, which was under the regulations as applied when we submitted the application. So there is no conservation easement. The letter I provided to the town planner includes a copy of the re-subdivision map. And Larry Geisler did vet it thoroughly. I went through the map, looked at the description, concluded the same thing. So there is no 75-foot area that we have to consider in this application. Finally, there were questions raised about notice provided in the application to the Inland Wetlands Agency. All I can really say is that this commission doesn't have any jurisdiction to consider notice defects for another land use commission in the town. These all dealt with abutters notices and the published notice. Certainly, the abutters could have taken an appeal from the permit to conduct regulated activities. They did not. There's no record of it in time. It's just not germane to this commission and no reason to consider it. For our application, there was no requirement for personal notice to the abutters. The published notice was acceptable. It fairly apprised anybody who read it what the application is, and there's been significant public participation. So I really don't see a basis for any claims about published notice or any notice before the Wetlands Agency. So just wanted to get that in. I did submit 15 copies in the original, so I think you all have it. But thank you for the chance to make these points. And then sorry about that. Peter Damali is going to come up next and introduce everybody and cover the rest of the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. For the record, Peter Damali, President and CEO of Design Professionals, Inc., with offices right here in South Windsor, 21 Jeffrey Drive. Also with us tonight, we have Jim Aldrich, who's a licensed professional engineer, and he's owner of Aldrich Construction Company in Manchester. He testified before you public hearings on your regulations, you recall, and he also testified the first of two public hearings on this application. Also, Steve Fleshman, architect, from Stephen Fleshman Architect in Massachusetts. He's here in the audience, right back there. We also have Jim Otis, licensed professional engineer, who testified last time before you. And also Jim Luzak, who's a PE and who's DPI's Director of Engineering. He's here today, in the back there. And we have Glenn Martin, professional landscape architect from Design Professionals. And I don't know where he went to, but okay. And also, and of course, you already heard from attorney Greg McCracken. So I'm going to offer some summary remarks with respect to this application and keep it as brief as I can in short order here. First item is that this is an industrial flex development, more commonly referred to as an incubator development. I've always known them as incubator developments. They're often startups and small businesses, small satellite locations for businesses. Common tenants are, right out of your zoning regulations, very similar to that, electrical and plumbing contractors and other small industrial businesses. And this development is a permitted use, not a special exception use, just a regular permitted use in your zoning regulations. Second item is that each of the 26 incubator units face inward by design. They face inward and not out toward residential. You have no windows, no doors, no lighting facing toward the residential areas to the east and south. So I thought I'd bring that to your attention by design. That's what our clients wanted. Also, third point is that this will be a state-of-the-art flex facility, as we mentioned last time. Instead of each tenant having, and this is with respect to refuse, instead of each tenant having their own dumpster outside of their unit, where they contract directly with a refuse collector, we've designed a centralized refuse area, screened with a gate, locked gate. Each tenant will have a key or some kind of access code. and large enough for 3 8-yard dumpsters. That's in the northwest corner of the site, in this relatively small site. We have a signed letter from a refuse collection service indicating they can restrict service to between the hours of 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. for collections during the business day, weekdays, and not overnight. We heard from neighbors who are concerned because they hear some dumpsters throughout the industrial Route 5 corridor being unloaded at other hours beyond the normal business day. And we have a letter from Windsor Sanitation. I've spoken with some other people too, and refuse haulers can restrict service at request, as requested, to the business day, 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So we're not, we believe that we can achieve that. They can also, I know Michelle referred to that, and I had spoken to her about it in a written response, but also, in the event they want to have a very small dumpster unit that they can hold within their garages. They're identical to the units that you have on your roadside for homes, these small rolling carts. They could have them. Our landlords, our clients want to control that so that it's one entity, one service, so it's all on the same day. So they can roll them out the night before and roll them back into their garage, and they're not outside other than the night before and until they're picked up during the day. So at the end of the day, they're rolled right back in. That's for many businesses that don't generate much in the way of service. They just want to have one right by their unit. But other than that, they're not allowed to have any 2-yard or 8-yard or any other dumpsters around the site. That will be prohibited in their lease. It would also be subject to any other dumpsters would be subject to approval from this commission. And we're not proposing any of that. Fourth item, parking. Unlike most incubator facilities, I've been involved with some for the last 37 years, we have a design which accommodates commercial vehicles which don't readily fit in the required, PCC required 9x18 parking spaces. There are lots of them. Includes, for example, we have 20 spaces, they're 10 feet by 30 feet, so you could park a box truck, for example. And our overhead doors are oversized. They're 12 foot wide by 14 feet high. Every single one of them. So large vehicles can be parked in those garages, and there are 32 garages. And that doesn't even account for some of these units are deep enough where they have even vehicles of that size in tandem. Not expecting that, but that's a possibility. So we can accommodate 132 vehicles of all sizes, including the smaller commercial vehicles. But zoning requires just 63 of them at 9x18 size. So we're far exceeding the size of these spaces, some of them, and also the total number. We're not expecting anybody to have to be parking in the driveways. Those are exclusively for circulation and nothing else. Also, we have 7 EV stations, as we discussed previously. The roof structures, as Jim Aldrich mentioned in his presentation last time, roof structures is designed to accommodate solar, and he's reviewed, last time he reviewed our energy conservation measures and the options available for us with respect to heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. 7th item, our buildings are 16 feet lower than what the commission allows, which is 40 feet. Impervious coverage is about half that which is allowed. 75% is allowed, we're about half that. Building coverage is about 1/3 of allowed. We're less than 15%, 50% is allowed. 8th item, no outdoor storage area by design is allowed on the site. They don't want it. If they want to have an outdoor storage area, they have to go somewhere else to another competing facility. With respect to buffers, Glenn Martin had an aggressive design with 68 evergreen trees and 120 flowering evergreen shrubs. And this also includes the trail system required by the commission by virtue of their easement on the property for the trails. Applicant has agreed to have a license after we're approved, assuming you approve this project, a licensed arborist walk with a licensed landscape architect within the buffer and with also accompanied by town staff to see where to place new plant materials. We have a design for it, maybe modifying that, and also to identify any trees which may be unhealthy. So we'll have an expert there on site with respect to, a couple experts with respect to that. The goal, however, is to save as many trees as possible, and the public has indicated they would like that. 10th item is, as Attorney McCracken stated, there is no conservation easement on the 6-acre property as alluded to at the last hearing by some members of the public. 11th item, we had our civil engineers analyze our impact, if any, on the Newbury Brook watershed. That was at the request of Town Engineer Jeff Doolittle. And our conclusion was that we have no impact, and our peak flow is well after the peak flow at Main Street. Mr. Doolittle has also opined on this, and we concur with his findings that he reported at the last hearing. 12th item, our stormwater and water quality systems meet all applicable town and DEP standards, as does our erosion sedimentation control measures, and our engineers are here tonight to answer your questions. That's Jim Otis and Jim Luzick. They're both here for that. 13th item, our client has agreed to install the buffer elements prior to building permits, as we had reviewed even with the Wetlands Commission. Item 14 is our client has agreed to maintain the northern swale free-flowing and remove invasive Phragmites. Item 15, the landscaping plan for the 2 water quality basins is ambitious and to establish a park-like setting. If you need any further details, I know Mr. Martin reviewed that in depth at the last hearing, but if you have any questions for him, he'd be glad to entertain those and respond. Item 16, we have no traffic impacts. Item 17, cameras will be installed throughout the development. Leases will have specific tenant requirements and regulations in terms of where they can place things, vehicles, storage, that type of thing, and trash removal and a whole bunch of other aspects. And they'll be good citizens. So that will be in the regulations. Incidentally, Teo Rotaro is here, front left. She's one of the 3 partners in this development. Also, item 18, Trio Investment Properties LLC, her business, has agreed to restripe the parking areas in the...
Excuse me.
Yes.
One of our commissioners asked the numbers that you're referring to. Can you tell me exactly where you're getting those numbers?
Those are just my notes that I'm reading from.
Pardon me?
Those are just those notes that I'm reading from. I don't have any written statement. I'm just giving an oral statement.
Okay.
That's why I don't back up or go forward too far. So Teo and her 2 partners have, including Dan Russo was here last time, local resident, has agreed to restripe the parking areas in the 6 to 10 year time frame. As we're preparing for this particular development, we looked out the region at other similar developments, and we're trying to figure out, could they accommodate larger vehicles as we have done, how many parking spaces they have and all that stuff. And a lot of them, a lot of the industrial and commercial developments in town have faded striping, and I'm being generous with that term. We couldn't determine where the parking spaces were, nor the size of them. And I'm not just talking about incubator facilities, but all around town, when you start looking for it, you find out that a lot of these spaces are not striped. There's all paintings long gone, and we're anticipating somewhere in the 6 to 10 year range that the striping will need to be redone, and they're agreeing to that. 19th item for my comments, we comply with your regulations, zoning regulations. 20th, and finally, our client has been sensitive, we think sensitive to the location of this property, zoned for industrial for decades, and they want to be good neighbors to the residential people to the east and southeast of us. And our entire design team is available, including Attorney McCracken, to address any questions from the commission. And thank you very much for your consideration. And we're on standby if you need us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So at this time, we'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. I have nothing new to add other than I just can concur with what was given to you tonight by the attorney related to some of the items that were brought up at the last public hearing. The map that was provided was the map of the Constitution Landing subdivision where there was a 75-foot conservation easement put on a portion of what was then called Lot 8. When Carlos Pasta expanded, there was a lot line revision and a portion was given to, was made a part of the Carlos Pasta's lot. That is what has the conservation easement on it. So this lot does not have any conservation easement on it. So the language, I think we'd been given a wrong description and it referenced Lot 8. So you could see where some confusion came in, but those maps are on file in the land records and I will concur that there is no easement on that, related to that. Again, related to the land use of the application, we have general contractor establishments like this all over town, and they do come in under our zoning use table of the general contractor for electrical, plumbing, those kinds of things. So this, wouldn't be considered a warehouse in our eyes. It is just at a contracting establishment. And then, again, related to the wetlands, anything related to the wetlands notice or decision would be something you would appeal that decision, and there were no appeals taken related to that. So other than that, I don't think I have any other comments on anything. The revised plans were really engineering in nature. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I just have two minor comments from my previous comments. One, there needs to be a couple of elevation adjustments in the riprap spillways from the two detention basins that can be taken care of with the final plans. And just to remind everybody, WPCA review and approval is needed for this application.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I will turn to members of the public. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Please step forward. Okay. Hearing none, I'll ask, is there anyone who would like to speak against or have questions and concerns about this application? Please step forward. And I'll ask people if you've already stated certain points, please don't be redundant, repeating what you've stated in the past. We do have those on the record already. Thank you.
Good evening, Steve Gretsch, Judy Lane, South Windsor, Connecticut. So I'll stay away from what we discussed last time as far as the 75-foot easement. However, I will submit to the committee other design professional maps that were submitted for other projects.
Excuse me.
I'm walking and talking.
Yeah. Thank you. Do you need another one, Paul, or? We could pass them down, Steve, unless we'll give you any extras. Thank you. Okay.
So as you can see on the lot next door to this lot that's in discussion, the 75-foot easement goes all the way through. As with the easements that were turned in last time we were here, if you look, stamped by design professionals. On the next page, you'll see expanded with the conservation easements as they were submitted to this committee last time we were here. And that was the 1192 page, 237. Volume 1192, page 237, which I'm surprised that Town Planning and Development doesn't have copies of. But we mentioned that last time as well. There are some additional points I'd like to bring up. Staying away from inland wetlands. Some of that I can't comment on.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I'm going to skip over the, first of all, the plans do not have either the 75-foot conservation easement in them, or, number two there, they don't have a 75-foot buffer either way. Because these plans were submitted after the May 28th timeframe for moving from a 50-foot to a 75-foot. So either way, the plans don't even have 75 feet. If you include the two, it'd be 150 feet. I'm not going to talk about Rich DeLay, what he submitted last time. In 7.2.4.1, again, we talk about truck freight bus terminals and the differences thereof. I'm not going to go into that. From the revised site plan application 2311P dated 6/21/2023, last seen on line 1342-0626-2023 yesterday. Page 15, property and topography survey. Dimensions of trees are grossly under-exaggerated as witnessed by 6/13/2023 submission, which is last time we were here. The South Windsor tree warden should be brought in to make an independent study representing the town and the residents' interests. See on that, P&Z Reg Section 6.2.1E, dash E, large trees and stands of mature trees and shrubs that remain undisturbed where practical and desirable, existing healthy trees of 18-inch caliper and greater. Where the heck did I just go? To be located either singly or as groups, shall be incorporated into the site plan to the maximum extent possible. The revised site plan from June 21st shows a large number of trees, but oddly no double or triple tree trunks. Sheet V1 seems odd in that so many of the trees are marked as only 17 inches. Last time we were here, I actually showed physical pictures with measuring tapes to them, not matching up to what was submitted on this page. Number 5, name of adjacent owners and zoning classification. I think that goes back to the Inland Wetlands app. They didn't notify one of the actual abutters. Locations and descriptions of all existing and proposed easements and rights of way. There's no mention of the conservation easements on the southerly and easterly borders. Location of existing trees. Again, this is 8.6.2 B14. Location of existing trees. We'll go down to B16. When buffers are required, the buffer design is proposed after 5 years' time. Buffer submitted on the revised site plans, 6/21/2023, do not have correct dimensions, which should include conservation easement and 75-foot buffer. So on and so forth. This is your regulations. Form and content of general plan of development. A layout plan showing type of development and uses, the proposed general system of utilities, including sewer, domestic water, fire protection, stormwater. Again, we spoke of the site plan, naming conventions of what actually that building is. 6.1.4, natural landscape features. Comments made by design firm to the effect they will make it better than it was. Video recording 6/13/2023, P&Z committee meeting. Similar comments made by design firm, soil scientists on multiple occasions throughout inland wetlands. So without mentioning that, but if you go back to the video of 6/13/2023, it's again 6.1.4, where the design firm actually says that they can make it better than nature itself. 8.7.3, criteria for plan evaluation. The purpose of these criteria is to establish a checklist of those items that affect the physical, blah, blah, blah. Okay, putting commercial buildings 75 feet or 150 feet will impact the resale value of the neighboring community. So that speaks to your regulation, which is 8.7.3. Effect on health, safety, and general welfare of the community, location and dimensions of public and private pedestrian walkways, 75 conservation easement and walking trail no longer appear. Types, styles, and colors of building materials, fall and winter months, buildings will be exposed to residential surrounding community. Again, I do have single copies of the easements that they don't say exist, if anybody needs them, with longitude and latitude coordinates.
Yeah.
I got a single copy, yeah, if somebody can make copies.
That was handed in last meeting, was it
Same
not?
one as
Yeah,
last
So it's
meeting.
the same document you received
Same
last.
document as last meeting with, again,
On your microphone.
the title search, and the actual easements themselves.
Is that complete?
That's
your
all I have.
testimony? Thank you very much.
Thank you, all of you.
Is there anyone else who would like to speak against or have questions or concerns they'd like to address? Please step forward. Stutter.
Yeah, name's Robert Stoddard from 10 Barber Road, South Windsor, Connecticut. You know, how are you gonna do a walking trail down the side, down the back end of these houses? You know, I'm very concerned about this walking trail. You know, other than that, you know, he's saying about how cars are gonna be parking there from 7 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning, or coming and going between these hours. Then he don't tell you, now he's got 13 to 27 vehicles leaving in the afternoon. What do they mean by the afternoon? And, you know, and the evening hours. And then they don't have nothing for the weekend. You know, as a builder, I can't say I'm a builder, but as a person that wants to rent a place to store their stuff, as a builder, that how much are they gonna pay for these places? Where does that come from? From my pocket, don't it? You know, then all of a sudden, the homeowner's gotta pay more for them to store stuff. You know, but they don't say how many people are leaving on the weekends, or how many people might be there on the weekends. But who says that they know who's gonna be there? You know, as I say, this walking trail, you know, you know, did anybody here go check out 10 Barber Road, South Windsor, Connecticut? I guess not. You want to see it? I'll draw you a little picture right here. See this little red dot? This little square? That's my house. 22 feet away from his property. That's it.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, wait a minute. And another thing is about the trees. Who's gonna say these trees are healthy? Are we gonna take down healthy trees? What about the tree on my property that I think is good? Who's gonna take that tree down? Because I think it's unsafe, being so close to my house.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please step forward.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dan Edwards, 131 Hilton Drive, first-time speaker, long-term listener. Thank you, first of all, for your service to the town and for the many hours you put in. Once again, we have a case of a proposed industrial development right next to residential properties. And once again, the Inland Wetlands Agency and Conservation Commission elected to ignore questions or address the many wetlands actually present and basically disregard their own regulations. As a 19-year taxpayer in South Windsor, the overabundance of development in this community and false promises by the developers is apparent to many of us. A review of both the current and prior regulations raises real concerns and questions as to whether what is being proposed truly meets our zoning regulations. Being a resident in the immediate neighborhood, I have seen land developed within feet of houses, with many of the promises originally from developers lost once the plans are approved. And in the past few months alone, we've seen at least 7 of our neighbors sell their houses due to recent changes in applications in this immediately area. I echo the prior two speakers' comments with respect to tree concerns and implore or request that the tree warden truly take a look with the measuring tape. It just seems a little odd that there's no reference to double or triple trunk trees. I also echo the concern with the buffer width. In May 2023, the new regulation is clearly listed in section 6.2.4.c buffer widths that states that the buffer is to be 75 feet wherever industrial meets residential, while the plan submitted provide for sort of a 50-foot buffer. In an industrial zone, it states that pre-existing lots, developed or approved, not just submitted, can maintain the buffer. This lot has not been approved as of May 28th, 2023. Moreover, I actually have a handout here, so to save time, you can see some of the things that I pointed out to relative to regulations. So, in any event, how is this applicant providing a buffer on both sides of the property per regulation 6.2.4b3? All we have seen is that it would appear that the property border has been shifted 5 to 10 feet along the residential border, encroaching homeowners' lands. If they cannot provide the required buffer per the new regulations, then they need to comply with the old regulations. The lack of recognizing an existing conservation easement is no excuse. Saying that they are obscuring the view of the development by leaving trees up within their buffer is laudable. But they need to be mature trees, and they claim the trees are less than 18-inch in diameter. Finally, and although it's not a perfect example, anytime anyone gets off at 291 west at Route 5 as we approach the light, there in front of us is 50 feet of trees. In other words, at most 1 to 2. And during the winter, you can see right through them to Home Depot as well as the Amazon Ghost House. It is imperative that the committee holds applicants responsible in adhering to the process and regulations set forth in the zoning and planning regulations, along with the regulations that were skirted through inland wetlands. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would like to address the commission regarding this application? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none, we will turn to commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A lot to react to. I'm hopeful as we go through this, my fellow commissioners can ask some of the pertinent questions that were brought up by some of the public in terms of the objections and get some of the answers. I have a couple things I want to ask specifically. Peter, I think you're probably in the best position to answer my questions. You addressed some of these things during your discussion, but you speak quickly and I can't always pick up some of the things.
Sorry about that.
Give me 3 to 5 examples of who these tenants would be.
They could be, as we described in our narrative and in your regulations, if you look at that section, it says electrical contractor, a plumbing contractor, any other kind of contractor, that type of use. It also allows small they're all small, they have to be small, but small industrial enterprises are allowed. It doesn't specify exactly what industrial enterprises, but small ones can come in there. Also, historically, they've seen like regional satellite facilities for for particular business enterprise in this area. They only need a small office, a bathroom, and a garage, maybe to store things, or they put their van in and they go out to the field. So that type of thing. Many of them are startup. They were first identified as incubators because what they do is they're small spaces for somebody to get started. The rent's not high. It's not a lot of space. You're only renting your space itself and some parking. That's all you have to pay for. So somebody who's starting out can start out at one of these facilities. Maybe they're working out of their house or something, and they said, I want to get out. I want to get in here. So they can do it. People who won't be there, people who need an outside yard for equipment, stockpiling things, pipes or other items or big equipment, stuff like that. This is not the place for them.
Okay, so to that point,
Yeah.
are there any restrictions being imposed? And I guess where my concerns are in this area would be things that we've visited in the past. Excessive noise, excessive pollution, things that would be, let's say, overly disruptive to the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
I mean, I can understand a plumbing contractor, electrical contractor, there's probably not a lot of those things, but is there anything built into the way you're proceeding with this that would preclude what I'm talking about?
Teo Rotaro is here. She's one of the principals here, but we've had extensive discussions, even with Dan. I had discussions yesterday, Dan Russo. And that's it. They're going to have strict guidelines within their leases. What you can't do, you can't pollute, you can't make excessive noise, that type of thing. They're going to have that buried right in within their regulations, and they're going to enforce it. They're also going to have cameras throughout the whole development. So if anybody's violating the terms of their lease, they'll be held accountable for that, and they've got to comply. The only uses that are allowed are those which are allowed by the zoning regulations and this commission. Anybody tries to do anything else, they won't be able to lease to them. So they're going to have in their own lease and regulations for this development strict standards. And so you can't, things that are, excessive sound becomes noise, and it's excessive, and it's obnoxious to people around there. So they're going to have to meet the standards that this town employs for noise and also for the state standard. And if it gets out of control, they'll take action. They've indicated that to us.
And the hours? Give me the hours again.
Well, we don't have set hours of operation because this isn't like a retail business.
So it's 24/7?
There are 26 units here. They set their own hours of operation.
So it could be 24/7. People that rent these can come and go whenever.
It could be. That's unlikely, but it could be.
Okay, that's all. Thanks.
Okay, Commissioner Cavagnero?
Thank you. I do have a couple comments and questions. I guess the very first one I'll start off with, and just clarifying this, and if we've seen anything like this in South Windsor before, because I know right next to St. Mark's Circle, the condominiums there on the left-hand side, where Other Designs is located, I'm pretty sure, is that something that we'd be referring to as a flex space, or is that something different compared to what this is right now?
What's that?
What Bissell Commons, probably.
Bissell Commons, which has been around 35, 40 years, I'm guessing?
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere in that range. That's broken, the buildings are broken up into individual units. They all have an overhead door probably, so they're similar in that regard.
More like what we see over on Route 5. You have a couple, the Charbonneau buildings, 1265, where they have a long linear building and people have similar kinds of units. On
Yeah.
Sullivan Ave, we have some. Nutmeg Road, you have a couple different units. So it's been something we've seen over the last 30, 40 years, Bill.
Yeah, most of them, however, have been built more than 20 years ago.
Right.
310 Nutmeg Road South, for example, is one, they have even smaller units, but that one must be 30 years old. So what we're presenting is something we think is state-of-the-art, completely different from what we have out there in the marketplace today.
Okay. Yeah, I also notice, I guess one of the differences with that is not every unit there has a garage compared to here where every unit does have a garage and some of them have
Yes.
two garages. Is the reason for that because you're trying to attract different tenants, or like you described with Commissioner Bernstein's comments?
Well, there are two reasons that come to play Several reasons why you want to have an overhead door and why we selected the size we do. You can have tenants that need to get certain commodities inside their space. Let's say you have a carpet installer, okay? They may have rolls that are 12 feet wide or whatever, they want to get them in there readily. So they want to have more space. We also want to be able to accommodate a wider truck. That would be a pickup truck with the big mirrors or whatever, dualies, that type of thing. They can park them in there at night. They aren't subject to vandalism, that type of thing. So we want to be able to accommodate that. Someone may have a trailer, that type of thing. So we wanted to have overhead doors for that. So they have a parking space inside the building, or they can use them outside the building. And then the size of whatever they may be storing in there will vary, and some of them may be larger. And as a consequence, we want to be able to, so that any prospective tenant at all who's looking for this kind of space, they can accommodate them in terms of the size. That's the height of the doors for like a box truck, and then the width of the doors for the type of vehicle they have. Some with mirrors that stick out, some are wider, much wider than a passenger car or SUV, that type of thing. So they want to be able to accommodate all of them in each of the spaces. It's a lot more money to do that, but they felt that that was a market that wasn't necessarily being addressed, and they wanted to be able to accommodate them, just like they're looking into many other issues.
Okay. A minute ago, you described this as state-of-the-art, and by that comment, I would assume that this is something that is in demand and that other towns are pushing to do as well. Is that the case, that, you know, other towns have done flex spaces like this before, or is this something like one of a kind?
Well, this is different from any we've seen. There are other incubator-type facilities, flex facilities throughout Connecticut and Massachusetts. They're out there. I don't know of any that's done just this, with all the characteristics we have. A centralized refuse disposal area. You don't have a whole bunch of them all over the place. Only the landlord provides that service. That you have the overhead doors, and you can accommodate also, very few of them, if you look around, you'll see that very few of them have spaces that can handle a truck or a truck with a trailer, larger vehicles, because these types of facilities do attract them. And if they don't have a place to park them, then, you know, sometimes it gets, you know, out of control. So they want to have it. We have much more parking than required under zoning, and we can accommodate all sizes of vehicles that were attracted to this type of small facility. So that's why we did that.
Okay. The only other comment I have is really with the garage doors. I recently read an article about compared to garage doors that are accessed with a key compared to those with like a security pad with numbers on it. It's, I guess, a lot safer if you use a pad on it. I'm not sure what you guys are proposing for that, or if that's down the line, you guys will figure it out. I'm just curious what your guys' plans are for, I guess, the security of these garage doors.
Either Jim Aldrich or Steve Fleshman could discuss maybe some of the options. Jim Aldrich from Aldrich Construction.
Sign in later. There's a lot of options for overhead doors: fob, keypads, keys. Some people have concerns about the remotes that you have on houses. The technology has changed. There used to be an old problem that there was about 30 to 40 codes. It's a 6-pin device, but now they have a random system that's more secure. Is there chances people could hack those overhead doors? I can't give you any assurances on that. It may be that some people want to have old-fashioned keys to open those things. It's not a guarantee that everybody wants an automatic overhead door. You can have doors that are disabled, so you come in the personnel door. If I'm not aware of any of my customers, and many have overhead doors, of any industrial users having security breaches because of overhead doors currently.
Okay, thank you. The very last question that I have, and again, this is just all hypothetical. I know it wasn't really included, but, you know, there are 26 units and roughly almost 70, or more parking spaces than 70 actually. So I'm guessing, and trying to guess here, how many cars are we expecting to see coming in and out every single day? And again, if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I'm just curious before I guess sign off on my comments.
I presented that testimony at the first hearing. We gave the peak morning hour, I think it was 7 to 9 a.m., And then we also did the afternoon peak, I think it was 4 to 6. We estimated those. Those are relatively low numbers. I don't know, off the top of my head, I could go look them up if you like, but they're very low numbers. And we expect that the vast majority of traffic will go right down to South Satellite Road. That's the only place they can go. And then they'll take a right on South Satellite Road and go out to the light at Route 5. Some may take a left on Nutmeg Road South, and some may take a right on Nutmeg Road South. But we think the vast majority of traffic will go down to the major highway in the area, which is Route 5, which is half a mile away.
Yeah, no, I was just concerned about input and output. Thank you for bringing that up again.
Yeah.
I have no further comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Commissioner Viteri?
Peter, while you're standing up there, and I apologize, I wasn't at the June 13th meeting, and I spent, since I landed in an airplane this morning, I've spent all day trying to read through everything that you said. So if I re-ask a question that was addressed on the 13th, I apologize. I think Alan just asked the first one I was going to talk about, if you thought that traffic would have any impact on South Satellite Road,
No.
the types of vehicles or anything would be easily handled. Yeah, I saw the 25 and 9 and the 13 and 27.
If you like the numbers, I'll just read them off. From your minutes, 7 to 9 a.m., first peak hour period, we estimate 25 vehicles entering and 9 will exit.
Right.
It's in the morning. In the afternoon, 13 will enter and 27 exit, and that's during the peak period. the
And you
morning
said
and the
afternoon would be between 4 and 6 maybe is the.
Yeah, somewhere in
peak,
that
which would be
range.
Somewhere around there?
Yeah.
Okay. As far as the drainage and the onsite, the off-site drainage, I know it says here that it'll be draining to the Main Street culvert on Newberry Brook, and that you won't exasperate the existing problem, because they
Right.
admit there's a problem there. Will it impede their correcting of this problem or handling of this problem in any way?
We did a comprehensive study of the whole watershed from our site all the way down to Main Street culvert. Mr. Doolittle asked us to do that. We did that. Our engineers did that. We submitted that. And it concluded that we were not going to have an impact on that. Our peak was well after the peak that hits that culvert, won't have an impact. But I think it'd probably be better to throw that out at the town engineer with respect to his comments about the overall problem there. We don't believe we're contributing to the problem.
Jeff, do you think it'll have any impact on trying to solve the problem, whatever that solution turns out to be?
No, I think the problem stems from the area west and south of Main Street, where
Okay.
Newberry Brook really flattens out.
Okay. And one last thing, I saw in the minutes, it says the roof will be constructed as to allow for solar panels. Are you putting solar panels on, or is this going to be up to each person
Mr.
to
Aldridge will
decide?
just summarize what he said last time, if you wouldn't mind. He went through all the options for energy, but we're not in a position to commit. But Jim, you want to just address that briefly?
To put solar panels on the roof, you have to beef up the structure. You have to have, you design a roof for 30 pounds a square foot snow load. Could be 5 to 10 pounds extra, which would be a 33% increase. All the buildings are going to be built so solar panels can be added in the future. The technology is changing. Efficiency of panels is increasing. I can't tell you if they're going to immediately put solar panels on, but we want to have the footings, the foundation, the structural steel, all designed so that in the future they can have solar panels. And I would say, based on my own observations of current trends, solar panels are going to be an option more and more people will be choosing, because they're getting to be more and more affordable all the time.
Okay, so I understand you're not proposing that you folks are going to put the solar panels on. It's people who become your tenants. If they decide they want solar panels, then it would be on
That's
them.
going to, many times that's driven by the landlord. I can't speak for them. Sometimes when people rent a unit, it has electrical included. So you can have a system that handles multiple units. Because someone's leasing the space and the payback on solar panels, probably be more an owner's decision to make it more affordable. The payback on panels today is, assuming the roof and the foundation are designed structurally for this capacity, is a payback of 7 to 10 years. But the cost increase to make the structure solar compatible is a considerable amount of money.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much. That was it.
Commissioner Foley?
Peter, when you spoke right out of the gate about the dumpsters and having a centrally located, gated and locked up facility, then you had mentioned about the individuals could have a wheeling unit that they could bring in and out of there. Now, so basically it would be a management company. So we're not having dumpster trucks running in and out of this place 5 days a week.
Right.
Tipping, right? It's gonna be it's gonna be written into, it's kind of like a planned urban development, but a planned commercial development that one vendor, there's only one dumpster company, correct? And it's done on one day of the week.
That's what they're talking about for the 8-yarders. The question is, we don't know, we know that these little, like the residential dumpster I use and everybody else in town has,
Yeah.
the town provides that service. There's an option for the tenants, individual tenants, if they don't like just having the 3 8-yard dumpsters on the site, they can have a small, like residential style one. And lots of businesses in town have that. They don't generate a lot. They could have one in their garage, in their unit, and then just roll it out the night before, and it comes through. And they would like to have that, also just one vendor doing that. I don't know if it's going to be the same day as the 8 yards are picked up. We don't know that, but we want to have just one vendor doing that. So it's one day a week, and then same thing for the trash and the 8-yarders.
And then also, on the back side of these buildings, there's egress doors, but it'll be written into your,
No,
there's no back door on these units, if I'm looking at the.
none. They don't back doors. Architect and the contractor and everybody's been looking at that, and we do not have any. None of them there are 4 buildings, and none of them have back doors.
Only on the north, only on an end unit? So the north elevation. These doors here. What am I? Well, the egress doors that are on your north elevation and south elevation, whoever those units may be, on those end walls, I would want to make sure that it's written that.
They're shown on the drawings, all the egress doors, all the man doors.
Correct.
Buildings 3 and 4 have no rear doors at all because they're abutting residential. So they designed that. They're back-to-back units on the center, Building 2,
Yep.
and then there's Building 1. So
I just want to reassure that on the north and south elevations, where those doors are, that, I mean, it's incubator space or flex space. If you do have trades such as plumbers, electricians, welders, that there's no pipe racks, there's no external storage at all
that's correct.
for,
Hold on just a second.
West building and center building have side doors near the parking lot.
Oh, for the last units?
building 1 west.
End units. East and south have none in the rear, and the west building has one on the north side. These units were specifically designed so that rear doors were not required.
But you have the side doors on,
Yeah.
Selected number of units, just a
But
few.
they're right next to the edge of the
doors.
parking.
what's that?
They're right next to the edge of the parking on the front.
Okay.
On the center building, the doors were added on the north side because there's so many parking stalls right next to it, make it more convenient for the people to go in. So I'm on drawing C, SP2. Drawing CSP2.
Hang on 1 second.
No.
So,
What number is that? Like 13 out of 14, what? It says that.
three,
Pardon me?
three.
3.
Three.
Okay.
2 and 3, SP2.
So what he's saying, in the extreme west building, which is the one right next to the cul-de-sac, there are two exterior doors, one at the northeast corner, right around the corner from the
Yep.
front, and then
Correct.
another southeast corner. And then for
Yep.
the middle building, which is Building 2, There are, at each of the four corners, there's one
There's
for.
two doors.
And, and as Mr. Aldrich indicated, that he and Steve Fleshman designed that so that they'd have access to all those parking spaces readily. Why not? You're right there. Why not put
Right.
to the side a little bit, just around the corner? There's no residential right there.
Just want to be assured that there's no external,
Very,
like,
very good question.
okay, you put a nice facade on the building, but then there's no ladder racks allowed outside, no pipe racks,
None.
no steel racks, no electrical
None.
racks. Okay.
That's correct, yes. Thank you.
And then on the question of the caliper of the trees, who determined, who did you guys have determine? the
Our
caliper?
land surveyors went out there and did a survey of all the trees over that, I think it's 18-inch size, on the property, and did a survey as part of our survey.
And how high up from the crown, from the root flare up, did they determine? the
I don't know at what height they do. I think it's usually breast height.
That's not where you take it from.
Right, right. What do you usually do for breast height? Yeah.
If you could, please come up to the microphone if you're going to be
Jim, can you come up?
supplying testimony.
Sorry, I apologize for that.
When determining the caliper of a tree, I want to know how high up from the root
It's called
flare.
DBH, diameter of breast height. So depending how tall you are, it's breast height.
And for the record, could you introduce yourself? please?
Yes, Jim Luzak, engineer for DPI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no more.
Okay. Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. So, I'm relating to an experience we had with Shake Shack where all kinds of utility connections suddenly appeared on the most prominent view of the building as you enter Evergreen Walk. So that's why I'm asking the question I'm about to ask. Where are you going to mount the utility meters? They're not shown on any of the drawings.
So, I don't know what the final decision is going to be on the electrical. If you're going to rent have each unit have an individual meter, or if you're going to provide the unit with power. So you're kind of one step ahead of us. But let's just say worst case scenario to answer your question, and let's say the owner finally decides they want to have a power unit for every single space. Sorry about that, folks. If you wanted to have a power unit on each space, the utility company is going to mandate where you put the meters usually. And it has to be on one of the faces closest. So I would guess on the west building, the meter might end up being on the south side, the center building, the south side. On the east building, I guess you'd put it on the south side too. And on the south building, probably the west side. And I can't tell you the size of the meters either, because they've been moving away from the old-fashioned meters to these electronic ones that are smaller with a signal. But if they had the old-fashioned meters, that's where you'd be a little bit more noticeable.
I don't know how big the gas meters are these days.
I would be recommending to the customer that for the size of these units and with what's going on with energy efficiency and what we're building, that they would not have the gas separate for every tenant. But again, that hasn't been thought through in full detail.
So my next question is similar. I'm assuming that at least some of the units will need to be air conditioned, especially as things get warmer. Where will you be mounting the compressors, the outdoor part?
It won't justify using rooftop units, things like that. We talked about this previously, about the energy efficiency of heat pumps
Yeah, well, a heat pump would have the same sort of, probably can't tell the difference when you look at it. It's still going to be a unit outside,
Oh,
right?
that's right, no, I'm not disagreeing with that. It would be a condenser outside. The condenser for some of the units be about this big in diameter, and about that tall. Maybe a little taller, something like that, for the perimeter units. For contractor space, because it's going to be shop, I doubt that electricians, plumbers, carpenters, sheetrockers, the vast majority, I don't think they're going to want air conditioning except in the office space, if they have office space, just for economics. If it's a small industrial user that wants it and it's going to be basically all shop or small manufacturing, I see that being less common user. Manufacturing usually needs more space than what would be here. I think contractors is more prevalent. They may want more air conditioning, and that would be a condenser outside. I'm going to guess that 400 square feet per ton of cooling for those type of people. So in a 1,200 square foot space, that would be 3 tons. That's really it's a small unit. The ductless splits, that heat pumps, those units, those condensers are small too. I would recommend, if they had the freedom to do that, that on the, it has to go, you can only run the thing about 90 feet to 100 feet. So it has, from the unit, you got to put that unit on the outside of the building. And if you had issues about that.
Yeah, I guess my concern is I know my own air conditioning. I have 2 kinds of units on my house. I have a conventional ducted air conditioning unit with a condenser outside. That gets fairly noisy. I also have a mini split to serve part of my basement that's very quiet, but I'm concerned about, a row of air conditioners showing up on the side of the building next to the residences, and while any one of them is probably no worse than their own next door neighbor, if several of them start to go on a really hot day, we do have days that approach 100 degrees here, they're going to start making a fair amount of noise that could be an issue for the residents.
I'm not certain I concur with your opinion about the noise of anything manufactured in the past 3 to 5 years. The units run very quiet in general. A carrier unit, train, those larger units, they do make more noise, but these units aren't going to be big enough to justify those.
Okay. I'm still wondering, I don't know whether the other commissioners would like to see the pads for those units illustrated on the drawings. We may ask for that.
I can probably also get you information about the decibel level. They're very quiet, but I can get you
Yes,
those numbers.
I appreciate that too. And I really, really like to hear you talking about heat pumps. Air source heat pumps are very effective in this climate here in Connecticut.
That's really a relatively new innovation.
I mean, your drawings show a gas line running, and I'm wondering, why don't you spare yourself that expense and just go to heat pumps?
So the gas company still will provide the gas to your building for free. We have to dig the ditch now from the street, but usually, if you do the load, the buildings are going to be more inefficient than ever. If they decide to go to one source for the offices, I think they would go with that. You're not used to getting this level of detail on the planning part. It's usually prior to the building permit aspect, and them committing to the final size of the units and what the needs of the tenant are going to be. But I concur with your basic premise that the new heat pump technology has changed the economics of buying it by a significant factor, and the old heat pumps of 5-10 years ago were only effective down to 38 degrees. The new high-powered compressors and the efficiency of the things, you can now use heat pump technology down to minus 12 degrees, which is the whole year in Connecticut.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that. I'm looking into it for myself. Peter, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes, sir.
You show some electric vehicle charging locations, and they do comply with the current zoning regulation, but I just had a conversation with Mr. Not Markelson, the building, yeah. And unfortunately, our zoning regulations are not consistent with the building code. So with the Energy Committee, we're in the process of developing a revision to the zoning regulations. It probably won't come through in time for your application, but the difference is in our zoning regulations, we allow you to put up a parking space that's accessible but not marked as handicapped only, and you get credit for an accessible space that way. The building code now says you have to have at least one accessible space. You have to have 5% of your charging spaces at an accessible space. 5% of 6 or 7 is, it rounds up to 1. So you have to have one space that's a handicap restricted electrical vehicle charging space. Before you put any other EV chargers in, you got to have that. That's the new building code. What that means is we'll probably give you a break on the other spaces, okay? So the idea would be that the accessible space would not be restricted to EV charging. That way we don't build all kinds of additional restrictions on parking spaces. And then the other spaces, of course, would be just normal parking spaces.
We have 2 EV charge spaces, and Glenn would like to address that.
For the record, Glenn Martin, landscape architect with Design Professionals.
Yeah.
We do have 2 van accessible EV charging stations above the center building.
Yeah, all I'm saying is the building code now, and the way you show it, is consistent with our zoning regulations, but if you have an accessible space, it has to be handicap restricted. That's the change, where we didn't have that rule before. So we'll be.
Well, I think we do have 1 EV charging station that is handicap restricted and 1 van space that's not handicap restricted.
Okay, yeah, you have to have one that's definitely handicap restricted. So I guess in that way you're complying. If you have another space that happens to be big, you're okay.
We do, yeah, we have 1 of each.
Yeah. And I don't think you're ever going to get to the point where you need 2 in this area, 2 handicap spaces. So maybe you've actually got what you need.
I believe we do, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's
Yeah,
see.
we intended to cover, we were aware of the building code change, and we thought we were addressing both the zoning requirement and the building code requirement.
I mean, we'd probably let you out of the other accessible space if that helps you, but that would be a site plan change that you could make after we pass the new regulations. You need 1, I mean, you're going to, eventually you're only going to need 1 handicap space for this size of facility.
And that's what we're going to show, the handicapped EV space.
Okay. On several of the drawings you show downspout, it's kind of shown on the northeast corner of, it's marked on the northeast corner, but they're shown all over the place. Do the downspouts just drain onto the pavement, or are they going to go into an underground system?
Currently, they're shown right to the pavement or the lawn.
Okay, so
Yeah, they're
the rooftop water, rainwater, as well as anything that lands in the parking lot is going to all run through the parking lot?
correct, yes.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to make sure we cover all the questions from constituents. We talked about trees, we talked about the walking trail. I mean, I happen to think the walking trail is a good idea. I've seen them all over the state. When they do go near residents, it's actually a benefit. a lot of residents actually build a little bridge over to the walking trail, so I guess I don't share the concern that Mr. Stoddard has. Hours of traffic, I think there's nothing we can do. I mean, these are businesses going to set their own hours, as Mr. Damali said. We can't tell them they can only work certain hours, so the estimate of when the peaks are is probably just the way normal people work. Who says the trees are healthy that we're keeping? I think Jeff,
I think the suggestion was at the time an arborist would be out on site in the landscape architect staff, so it would be done collectively amongst the group.
right. And then the issue of the buffer size. Now, this application came in before we changed the regulation, right?
It was, yes, it was submitted prior to the adoption of the new regulations requiring the 75.
So for the public to just know, if somebody puts in an application and then we change the regulations, they're committed to the original regulation, not to the new regulation. So that doesn't, if we change a 50-foot buffer to a 75-foot buffer, but they've already done the work of designing their site, et cetera, with the 50-foot buffer, that would be unfair, and the courts back this up, by the way, to require them to suddenly change to the new requirement.
Constitution Landing, the industrial park, it was Park Center, and then became Governor's Square Business Center, and now the latest iteration is Constitution Landing. That re-subdivision plan that this commission approved shows a 50-foot buffer on it.
Yep.
Yep. So we're consistent with that, the new regulation and the old regulation.
Okay, and that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dexter.
Okay, my comments are going to surround the hours of operation. Now, tell me if I'm wrong, the folks that are in these 26 units are leasing, correct? And they have signed a lease.
That's correct.
And the applicant is going to write up the lease. So is there any reason why the applicant can't put in hours of operation? For example, most small businesses work a half a day on Saturday and never on Sunday. So could there be hours in the lease that would say, now I'm not saying the person who's running the little small business can't come in, go into their office and do inventory or payroll. I'm talking about business activity. I would like that to be considered. That's all. Just think about it.
Okay, we heard.
Consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner LeBlanc.
Thank you. I have notes all over the place here. Looking at the elevations of the building and what the building is comprised of, to me it looks like a prefab Butler-type building. When I worked at DOT, we would put these up in different areas, but they're usually kind of hidden from the public. When we built DOT garages, we would go through a public hearing process, and there's one going up in East Hartford right now I was part of, and they kind of had architectural flair. And my whole point of this is that you're putting a neighborhood here, and I view Butler buildings as kind of a temporary type of building. They're about 25, 30 years. They're metallic. They're coated metal siding and roofing. When holes the roof down, will eventually rust. Their surface screwed with rubber gaskets. The buildings fade. They become dented. They're not very good for noise mitigation. Because they're metal sided and held up by purlins on the inside and the roof structure the same, the noise tends to radiate through the purlins and through the outside. There's fiberglass bat insulation usually inside. They're not typically covered in an industrial environment. They're not that soundproof, but I am concerned about that being next to a neighborhood. And it's mostly garage space. I'm looking at the floor plan. I'm not seeing trench drains and things like that. And it seems to me that you're right next to an environmentally sensitive area. And of course, we don't know who's coming in here and what's stored in here. So if anything were to happen, some spillage of some materials, some storage, some liquid storage will come out the doors and outside. Again, at my old job, we had trench drain systems because they've dealt with salt and fluids and things like that. So we had a containment process for not polluting your neighbors. I'm not seeing that here. And let me run through my notes here. This is probably a question for Michelle, but because we don't know the tenants and tenants change, is there a right to know process of what's stored in these buildings? Like say you have tenant A and they move out within a year, tenant B comes in and the neighbors don't know about it. What if you're bringing in like swimming pool supplies and you're storing huge concentrations of a different type of load?
So
which
anytime
would
a user,
change the
a user
context of the
change, they
building.
need to go back through the building department for the change of use of the building and you know, any kind of code relevant to the fire department,
But
fire
it's
marshal.
not, yeah, but it's not change of use. I know in the building code, when there's change of use, you go through.
Well, even
them.
change of tenant, they do look for them to come in and register with them. And they go back through and make sure the egress signs are in. And so every tenant, the fire marshal and building official do typically visit for those kinds of things. So again, from a zoning perspective, it may not need new zoning approvals because it's an industrial use by site plan and this is an industrial site plan. But they still would be visiting the building and fire.
Okay, all right, thank you. Let's see, noise mitigation, fiberglass bed, design seems to be, okay. Oh, just like cleaning of vehicles, whether that's on the property, outside, that type of thing. A lot of tenants tend to do that. I wash my cars outside, I'm not gonna lie to you, but is that something that's allowed or shouldn't be allowed in an environment like this?
A couple of things, and then Teo would like to address you as one of the owners. First of all, if a tenant goes in, they have to go through building department anyways, to the town, to Michelle and the building department, et cetera, and they're reviewed at that time. So before a tenant can go in. So that's standard. Another thing is, if they have any hazardous materials, they're required to register that with the fire department, and so they will know about all that stuff. And then it goes through another requirements from the fire code and all that stuff. So that's completely separate from the landlord. They have to register with them and broach that subject with them. Teo would like to respond to some of your questions as well.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to know the due process of that, because I'm not to give anything up here, but I've run into cases in the past where tenants had change on certain properties, and some of the things went unknown, and you walk in and you're kind of like you're seeing things you probably shouldn't see, and people didn't know about it. And I'm not sure if that's prevalent in this industry or not, but that may have been something that just wasn't accounted for, but I'd love to hear this.
As a property manager for multiple properties across multiple states, and especially we manage industrial properties, we specialize in that. I can tell you that one of the issues that we always face is requirements by insurance companies and mortgage companies. Any property that has a mortgage on it, it requires property insurance. And as a responsible property owner, you will have property insurance. Well, mortgage companies and property insurance companies are very, very, very strict regarding all of their requirements as far as environmental issues. In the state of Connecticut, in special, the environmental issues regarding a property, a commercial property in special, are very restrictive due to a law that we have, which is the Transfer Act. If any kind of environmental impact happens from any kind of event on a property, the property goes under the Transfer Act, which is a very restrictive legislation imposed by the DEEP, and the property landlord will have a very hard time selling that property. So, if we're talking about just the financial interest of the landlord in something like that, I can tell you that any landlord will be very restrictive in what they allow to store on the property as far as chemicals and things that would have environmental impact. And not only that, but the insurance companies require every year a lease rental. So they require to see what the tenants do on the property, what their use is, how many square feet they rent, what they pay. All of that has to be issued every year from the landlord to the insurance company. The insurance company goes through it with a very fine-tooth comb. And then if they see that there is any kind of user that will have environmental impact on the property, they require all of the, there is a very special list where they see all of the chemicals that are stored in the facility and the way to store it and the mitigation that is required to deal with any kind of spillage or anything like that. So it is very, very regulated by the industry itself, even if, you know, it's not regulated by the town. So it's kind of self-regulated by the industries in general.
Thank you. It's a great answer, and I know your intentions are good. And
Excuse me. Just for the record, if you could introduce yourself.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm one of the owners of the property, Teodora Rotaro.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it all depends on who runs the shop, and I've run into this and dealt with FM Global over the years and all that, and I hear you. There are checks and balances provided that they abide by them. Last comment I have is this is something for the warm weather. And it's in kind of environment, and I realize there's a little office space and it's mostly bay areas, and obviously I wouldn't think anybody's gonna cool them, so during the warm weather months, the garage doors will fling open and you're gonna hear everything that's going on in there. So that's one of the issues that's gonna be faced towards the neighborhood, and I am concerned about that, because if it's 85 outside, it'll be 95 inside, and so you open the doors and you do your work and you're gonna hear everything. You know, come fall, winter, spring, it's probably a non-issue, but you are going to get that in the summertime. I just want to be clear about that. But that's all I have, and thank you.
Thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir. Stephen Fleshman, I'm the architect, Stephen Fleshman, architect. I just want to address some of the comments about the colors. The colors, that you are correct, it is a pre-engineered building. We're not 100% sure which manufacturer will be selecting at the time, but we are looking at a particular one now. The paint finishes that are an option at this point are anywhere from 25 to 35-year warranties on those. And the sound transmission class, which is the way you rate the sound passing through a wall. An example, in a residential unit between tenants, it's a minimum of 50. The panel systems that we're looking at can go up to 55. So there are ways to reduce the sound, and we would look into those, obviously. So, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Carey.
Okay, Peter. And so I know Commissioner Dexter already asked this, but, you know, hours of operation, you said there was no restriction on them, but I'm still concerned that, like, for businesses, even for Costco, we said that there was a time from this time to this time that they couldn't pull their trucks in because, you know, they of residents. So I do just think that we have to think about the residents and look at, should there be, I mean, I understand people want to start early or whatever, but should there be some little window of time that, you know, that plumbers and electricians are probably all home, that, you know, they shouldn't be hours of operation. It doesn't make sense to me that this is 24 hours based on what it's being described as. I can just leave
In our industrial zone, for uses that are permitted uses, there are no hours of operation. Your hours of operation come into play when you have a special exception use, when you can put conditions on the uses, but all uses are subject to your noise ordinance. I mean, that is, late night noises are subject to the noise ordinance. So We have not, in all the years I can be here, think of anything we've restricted the hours of operation other than a special exception permit.
And then just two other things. One, I'd be interested in where the air conditioner pads are that somebody brought up. Hopefully not in the back of those units, especially not the big long run where you've got 7 units, because no matter how quiet they are, 7 times.
None of them, as I understand it, none of them will be at the back of Unit 4, Building 4, or back of Building 3.
Okay. And then
Yeah, we're not going to, excuse me, just for your edification, we're not going to be having any of those units associated HVAC, any element of that behind Building 3 or behind Building 4. Back of the easterly building, back of the southerly building, adjacent to the residential.
So we have discussed that before. I would recommend they do go behind, okay? I believe we can give you data that shows they're small and they're very quiet, and with a shrub this tall, we can screen it, be invisible. The noise should be imperceptible to the outside. The owner is saying that they may not want to put them there. I think in terms of plowing the driveway and stuff, I think that they belong in the back, and I don't see these things making any noise. I wrote in my notes that I'm going to get you folks some data about that, right? And I wouldn't advise you to accept that tonight. But whatever will be on that. If you look, people have these in their houses all the time. They're usually in the backyard. And I don't know if you have any of these at your own houses, but when they're running, I'm not saying they're whisper quiet, but it's darn close to that. The bigger units, the rooftop units, larger ones, which are ducted systems, and I'll tell you, I've been to restaurants where there's a unit sitting outside, this thing's screaming. The bearings are wrong. They should have replaced the thing. You know, it's simple common sense maintenance, right? But correctly functioning unit should be very quiet and should be small and should be 75 feet away from the property line. If somebody's concerned about it and you got an issue about that, I recommend you put in a screening requirement so you can't see it.
I still think that 7 of them, I just got a brand new one myself. It's very nice. And I have a little tiny house. I wouldn't want 7 of them in my backyard. So,
Is your unit, you got a new unit at your house? It's very noisy?
No, it's not too noisy, but I wouldn't want 7 of them.
Oh, and so you're more concerned about the looks as opposed to the noise?
No, I'm more concerned about the noise when you put 7 all in a row in the back by those residential houses.
Oh, they're not going to, the units, I don't know, the units are 25 feet apart, and I don't even know if every unit's going to even want these things. And if they do, these are going to be not for a whole house. It's a much smaller space in there. Okay.
Are you all set?
I just had one last question.
Okay.
Peter, you had mentioned that there was space for tractor trailers.
Excuse me, what was that?
You had mentioned that there was space for tractor trailers. How big was that tractor trailer that could fit in that space?
No, we're not having accommodating parking of tractor trailers on the site.
Okay.
We can, a WB50 could go through the site, but that's a tractor trailer, but we're not, and we don't expect that, but we know our design works for that. But we're not going to have any parked on the site.
Okay.
The tenants are going to be accommodated up to like a 30-foot long space for a wide box truck.
Okay.
That's what we've designed for. Other sites don't have that. We have it. We have a lot of spaces for that.
Okay.
And if they want to if they want to have box trucks and those things like that, and they need a longer space, they're going to be directed toward those units that have that space available.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank
Or
you.
they can park it inside the unit itself.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. In our minutes, it mentions that the pathway will be a natural surface. In the plans that you depicted it's showing a stone dust.
That's correct.
So are they going to be stone dust?
Well, the answer is yes, but.
Yes, the trail will be a stone dust surface.
Okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to make sure that that was accurate.
Yes. Yes.
On the plans, CSP1, there is a 20-inch maple that's listed on the northeast side that is not in the buffer. I would like to see that protected so that it's preserved, seeing as your intention is to save as many trees as possible.
Could you repeat the location again? I'm sorry.
The tree, and we can look at CSP 1. It is the northernmost or northeastmost tree, just outside of the buffer.
Okay.
And I could show it to you here if you want.
Yeah, it's not within the tree, it's not within the tree clearing limit, so it will be saved.
Pardon me?
It is not within the tree clearing limit, so it will be saved.
Okay, well, I want it protected.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep. We can add a note for that.
As far as on page CSP2, it's showing the WB50 truck turning movements. Will there be a sign somewhere near the entrance that lets truck drivers know of a certain size truck that can manage the site without it being a big issue?
Yes, we can add that.
You have that?
No, we can add that.
Okay.
We can add a sign. We don't have
Okay,
one now.
add, okay, thank you. Seeing as you're stating there will be no outdoor storage on the site, would the applicant be agreeable to an approval condition that there will be no outdoor storage on site?
There will be no outdoor storage areas, there will be pipes or anything like that. The only thing we discussed at the first hearing was that if we find out over time, for a limited period of time, with the tenant mix, we have some unused spaces, and somebody has for example, a trailer that they want to park in those spaces, stuff like that, that could go in there. But it's not going to be used for boxes of things and things of that nature. So the answer is yes, there will be no outdoor storage, but if we find out, and it'll only be on a temporary basis because the tenant mix can change, that they could be allowed to put in a parking space, let's say, a generator on a trailer, that type of thing, on a trailer in a parking space. But they won't allow it to exceed the size of the space at all.
Okay, so maybe if we worded an approval condition,
Again, if you look at your definition of outdoor storage, something like a generator on a trailer would not be considered outdoor storage. So something that's road-ready, that can be hooked up and left, is not considered outdoor storage. Outdoor storage is the pallets have piping on it, or, the areas that are not.
Right.
So this site does not show any areas like that. I think if they were to want to create that, they would have to take some parking away, and then they'd come in with something, and you'd look for a change order or modification of the plan to accommodate outdoor, if you were doing true outdoor storage. I mean, the trailers, like I said, we define it pretty well in the regulations when it becomes outdoor storage, and none of what Peter's describing really is outdoor storage.
okay, so if a contractor wanted to bring in a Connex box and put in a space, would that be
outdoor
allowed?
storage.
No, that'd be outdoor storage and we can't do it.
Okay, so I'll go back to my question. Would the applicant agree to an approval condition stating no outdoor storage?
Yeah, I think we put it right in our narrative, pretty sure. Yeah, we put it right in the narrative, no outdoor storage, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And that was the intent.
Okay. Walking trail. Okay.
While you're going through that, we have a couple additional items to follow up on the energy
Okay,
questions. from
by
other
all
commissioners.
means.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, So I wasn't ready for your question, but we now have AI. We have ChatGPT on Bing, and we have a Bard at Google. So I asked the question, ductless mini-split noise level, that's the question. And the answer came up, ductless mini-split systems like Mitsubishi home air conditioning systems are the quietest air conditioners on the market today. With an average noise level of 32 decibels, ductless systems are not only whisper quiet, they offer some of the highest SEER ratings and most efficient performance, blah, blah, blah. That's where it gets cut off on my screen, okay? But to Mr. Wagner's question about the use of heat pumps and ductless splits, we've gone on the record saying, especially for small offices, that's definitely the way to go, okay? The shop space has no AC. Any of the commissioners want further answers, I'd recommend, you got your phones, you can look it up, but my life experience is those small units are very quiet. I would recommend to my customer, if they have the freedom to do it, to put those units in the back, and if there was an issue, even with the 75 feet and the hedges and stuff, that if you were concerned about looking at the unit, the noise is not an issue now, that you allow them to screen it with some shrubs so you can't see it. And we can't tell you, are half the units going to need air conditioning? Some of them, I don't know. But the logical place to put them, if noise isn't an issue, is not. And because the units are so tight together, you can only run the refrigerant so many feet. You can't run it 200 feet. Refrigerant isn't set up for that. If you put them in the front, we're trying to plow and have some nice landscaping there. We don't have a lot of lawn in the front. The logical place, in my opinion, to put them is in the back. So I just wanted to give you that supplemental information.
Okay, thank you. Just following up on that, Mr. Aldrich, my understanding with these type of units, the contractors who utilize them, a lot of times they end up using air conditioning in the offices.
That's right.
For takeoffs and that type of stuff. And
yes.
The way these offices are depicted on your plans,
yeah,
they tend to be on the parking lot side. So
yeah,
with
you
you were just saying with running the refrigerant long distances, I would think that the shortest distance would be in front. And I understand what you're saying about plowing snow and all that. But it does seem that, you know, the shortest distance would be there. But that's not my pet peeve. I was just discussing.
No, it's a reasonable point, okay? But the units, I don't have the depth in front of me. I think they're 40 feet, okay, 40, 45 feet, okay?
Right.
Refrigerant runs efficiently, usually up to 90 feet, okay?
Okay.
The building lengthwise is 20 units times, let's say 15, 300 feet. The middle units gets to be complicated.
Okay.
And your efficiency drop, when you go from 40 feet to 80 to 90, it's not a big number. You go 90 to 150, there's ways you can deal with it, but the cost is incrementally more and the maintenance costs get to be higher.
Okay. I think the commission would just like to see any air conditioning pads on the plans. Is that possible?
If I could, Steve Fleshman again. These units are small enough where there's actually wall-mounted hardware. They're not even sitting on the ground.
For the splits and stuff?
For the mini splits, yes.
Okay.
So those could actually be on the front, be on the back, be on the side. They could be up high, out of the way, so they wouldn't even be ground-mounted. Probably prefer it to be ground-mounted
right,
for
the
maintenance.
Yeah, and
from
the
a
walnuts
maintenance.
are less pretty too.
Yeah.
maybe my statement was a little bit old school because in the olden days, of course, we had the big concrete pads, and now a lot of them are just PVC plastic or whatever.
So just to give you, I think we spent a lot of time with the customer. The customers have a lot of requests for this kind of space, okay? And what's really going on here is somebody wants to start a business. So what you do is you might do that job, let's say you're an electrician. You start doing that job part-time, nights and weekends, okay? And it takes off and people want you. Next thing you know, you've quit your regular job and now you're running your own business and you're doing it out of your house. Next thing you go, you hire another employee and you try to buy some materials in bulk. So instead of buying one or two, you buy a 3 month supply. Next thing you know, you got an employee and the employees come into your house to get some of the materials, and you're alienating your neighbors. So what do you do when you go from a very small company up to the next notch? Okay, you want to move out and you want to get a small unit, okay? So an electrician, that's the example. There's 45 major trades, okay? Sheet rockers, concrete guys, site guys, plumbers, heating, air conditioning, landscapers, people that just do seating, okay? Those companies in general, they may want to start at 6 o'clock, okay? But they don't want to start at the office. You want your workers going directly to the job, okay? They may, and maybe the foreman has to come there and get some materials. They're in general first shift enterprises, and they may want to park there, instead of going home at night, the owner, he wants to leave his company truck there and go home in his car. So many of those people, when they have their shop, they're unwilling to pay for air conditioning. And many of them are unwilling to pay for heat. But we're going to be building these units to the latest energy code, and the energy efficiency, we are R25 on the walls. 6-inch walls in most houses built 10 years ago, R19, okay? We're over R30 on the roofs, okay? Very tight, significant increases from 3 to 4 years ago. So these people, we don't have the answers on how many units want air conditioning today. We have to go to the marketplace. She has to find out who wants to rent these units, and they may start off and saying, I don't want any air conditioning. Now, in terms of electrical, these small guys, because their electrical load is small, if she rents them out, I would recommend we put on one big electrical meter, and you rent it out, including electricity. But all of a sudden, they got some guy that wants to have, let's say, a server farm. Okay, that's going to use a lot of power. What are you going to do? We would probably still keep the one main electrical meter, and there's a company called Eamon Demon. Eamon Demon is a Connecticut company that makes private electrical meters. The private electrical meter can go inside the building, so you've got this electrical building, 80% of it is just one tenant. You add an Eamon Demon private meter in the system so that all the tenants can have their rent including electricity, but the one guy with high consumption, he has a private Eamon Demon meter, and she has to take care of the paperwork of this because the utility company is only giving you one bill. In my own company, there's 3 companies here that share the building that I'm in. We have an honor system, and it's fantastic. We have that for gas, and we have that for electrical. And the reason is, if each unit, let's say you got 10 units in a building, 3/4 of the year, approximately 2/3, you're using no gas, okay, unless you get gas hot water, okay? Minimum bill for using no gas is over $50 a month. If you share the bill, the economics of it for everybody are a winner. So this is a new niche business they're trying to create to help all these people, and your commission more and more doesn't want these people working out of their houses because it's offensive to their neighbors. If they can come to this site and have it, it's on a dead-end street. We have to be very sensitive to the neighbors, and a lot of that's been discussed, but I don't think this is the lowest industrial impact use you could have, in my opinion. And all these trades I'm talking about, 90% of the time, they're all first shift businesses, 7 to 5. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Damali, if you could step forward.
Yes, sir.
This letter from Windsor Sanitation, it says they are able to do pickups during the hours of 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., but it doesn't say that that is the time that they will be doing it. So would you be, it sounds like it's the applicant's intention that they only want to do pickups of the dumpsters between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Would the applicant be willing to agree to that as an approval condition?
The answer is she's nodding her head in the affirmative, yes.
Thank you very much. Okay, that's all that I have. Does any of the commissioners have anything else? Commissioner Bernstein.
Thank you. We're having so much fun talking about air conditioning, I thought I would keep it going. Mr. Aldrich, is it?
He's right here.
Yeah, could I have you? And actually, this also might be something, Peter. So I agree with everything you say about the mini splits. I have 2 Mitsubishi mini splits in my house.
Excellent brand.
I would not even call them quiet. I would call them silent. But the thing is, they were $5,000 each, and that was 10 years ago. So my point is, we're talking about these units being used by startups. I don't know that if I'm starting up a business, I want to incur that kind of expense. So if we're really committed on behalf of those folks that want air conditioning or want heat pump or some way to control, that there be maybe some requirement that they use this type of device as opposed to other things that may make more noise?
You got to talk to the boss on that one.
So as far as cost of air conditioner, like a regular AC unit that you put on any kind of, because this type of cost, we're looking at small square footage.
Right.
And so it would be, it's a very different situation than a big warehouse, right? Where you have to heat a lot of not only square footage, but cubic footage, right? This one will have a very small cubic footage because it's not very high and the units are small. So basically we're looking at residential type units. So by comparison with a regular unit, a regular AC unit and a mini split system,
right,
I can tell you both in residential and in commercial applications, the cost to introduce mini splits instead of the regular stuff that's out there on the market is significantly less. So from a financial point of view, as a property owner, you want to use the mini splits because it's cheaper not only to run them, and it's, more sightly because they are much smaller, and it's more pleasant to use because you don't hear them. On top of that, they are cheaper. They are cheaper to install. They are cheaper to acquire. They are simpler to install. Much less work involved in installing units like that. They do AC and heat.
Right.
So instead of having 2 types of, you have the AC, which is separate, and then you have the heating, which is separate, you have one unit that will serve both, but that one unit for AC and heat is cheaper than a unit that would be just AC for a regular square footage. And as far as usage of electricity, it uses much less electricity than the regular units. So from the financial point of view of a, just a regular operator, it would be much more desirable to have this
Okay,
type
so
of
what I'm
units.
hearing is we have a commitment to something that's efficient and effective.
Yeah, as far as we haven't done a particular study, to be honest with you, for this site especially. We have not done that study to see, how much this would be versus the other. But from historical perspective of what I've done in 10 years of property management, especially in commercial application, I can tell you that historically we've migrated towards this application instead of regular AC units and regular heating systems, just because from all the financial point of view is much easier, and from the building point of view is much less impact on the building because they are smaller, so they are much more versatile where you can put them on the building, and they are easier for the contractors to install.
Got it.
1-day installation versus 5-day installation.
I had one last question. Michelle, this might be a town thing. So someone before mentioned the word generators, and I got to thinking with the kind of tradespeople that might be renting these, a couple of them might fire up generators. would that come under the town noise ordinance?
Any
Because-
noise emanating from a site would, yes.
Because I don't think we want that.
So again, all these, any of these units you're talking about would all be subject to the noise ordinance, so.
Okay.
I just want to add one, to answer part of your question that got left open.
Yeah.
Normally, this stuff comes up during the building process, not planning, but I would be recommending to the customer that they get married to one HVAC company, because the leases will probably gonna be 5 years or less, and the unit has a longevity of 20. And once you put it in, you're really committing to that space, that they have a unit cost for getting those installed, and they use the same HVAC company, the whole thing, and the maintenance of those units go to that one firm, so that if you take care of it all instead of multiple vendors coming in.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else, any other commissioners have any? Okay, is there any reason to keep the public hearing open? Staff, applicant? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing.
Thank you very much.
At 8:58 PM and move into our regular meeting. So at this time, I will call our regular meeting to order. First thing on our agenda is public participation. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak on something that is not on our agenda tonight? Please step forward. Hearing and seeing none. Our first item of business are the minutes for June 13th and June 20th. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Did everybody have a chance to review them? I had one note on the June 13th meeting on page, I think it was 5. It just talked about, it's number 11 on page 5. It said it should be noted outdoor storage is not permitted, provided that is screened from the public ways. It sounds like a double negative there. I believe it should say any outdoor storage has provided shall be screened from the public ways. That's the only thing I came up with. Does anybody else have anything? Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, on page 3, the bottom 2 lines.
Which?
Oh, June 13th.
Thank you.
It says solar, hot water, and electric are a possibility. I would say solar, comma, both hot water and electric, comma, are a possibility. I had to read that 2 or 3 times before I figured out what it meant, so just make that one change.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner? Can we approve both these sets of minutes by consensus with the changes verbalized? Agreed? Okay, thank you. Okay, our new business, we'll go right into new business, application 23-23P, Baylor Brothers. Is there someone here to represent the applicant? Thank you for your patience.
You start or I start?
You do. If you could, please introduce yourself.
I'm Tom Baylor with Baylor Brothers. I'd like to put air conditioning on my, I'm kidding ya. Holy schmoly, I never heard so much about air conditioning. No, we are looking to continue our 2-year temporary and conditional permit on our storage tent that is 30 by 60. We store things for landscaping that need to be kept dry, like grass seed, rolls of hay mat and pen mulch and even small equipment that we'd like to keep out of the weather.
Does that complete your presentation?
That's it.
Okay, at this time, I'll turn to our town staff.
9 o'clock. I gotta work in the morning.
Our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request of a 2-year temporary and conditional permit for the storage tent at 24 Jeffrey Drive in the industrial zone. This was originally permitted in 2002 by Superior Northeast as a temporary structure. The reason it doesn't comply with zoning is it sits inside the front yard setback, so it can't meet the zoning requirements to be able to have a permanent permit. This is currently being used for some storage of equipment. That's how it's been used in the past. The one thing that the commission has made applicants aware of, these are subject to building code requirements. Temporary structures do need to be renewed on a regular basis. We did have that as an approval condition. I'm not sure what conversations you had with the building department. We do have new personnel in our building department, so we would be requesting the commission approve that a new building permit be taken out for this. There is certain structural integrity that they would want to ensure with a tent that's been up this long. So that's the only staff concern that we really have. This regulation, temporary and conditional permits may be granted by the commission for use if the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured and traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. The commission does allow renewals to be done without public hearings. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Carey.
I have no comment.
LeBlanc?
Yeah, quick question. Just looking out for you here. How's the condition of the membrane on the tent? Is it doing all right, or is it fading, or?
It's white, so it
Yeah.
doesn't fade, but there is some repair, and actually, we're looking to probably put a new skin on top.
Okay. It's just, I've seen these before, we've used them in my previous job, and after 3-4 years, they tend to tarnish a bit.
Yep.
And the snow actually sticks to them. And I'm not saying it's gonna happen, but we've had them collapse. So come winter, and if you're getting the snow sticking to it, just kind of stay away from it, because when they go, they go. So the state actually started getting rid of them. They started using these dome sheds for storing salt, so they got away from this, but
This
this
is
was
a
something
dome-
that
this is a
became an
dome.
issue. Just wanted to
This is a dome one, so there's a.
Yeah, yep, but yeah, just keep an eye on the membrane. Other than that, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Dixter?
No comment.
Commissioner Wagner?
No comment.
Commissioner Foley?
No comment.
Commissioner Viteri?
No comment.
Commissioner Cavagnaro?
Yeah, just a quick comment. We can get to this in a second, but I just had a grammatical fix on the standard approval modifications. We can get to that in a second if you'd like. I just wanted to point that out before I forget.
Okay.
Did that have to do with me?
No.
'Cause
Commissioner
I had no
Bernstein?
idea what you just said. Okay, good.
Do alternates participate in this part?
Pardon me?
Do alternates participate in this part?
As,
We're not
Doesn't-
voting, but we can comment.
okay.
Yeah, so I've been doing this long enough where I remember last time, 2 years ago, when we renewed you. So I guess my only comment or question would be, does it make sense to increase it more than 2 years? Our regulations don't allow that.
No, I read that too, but I just want to have the question asked. Yeah, I agree. No.
That's it.
Okay, and I don't have any comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure? Commissioner Wagner, sorry.
I move we approve application 23-23P, Baylor Brothers T&C Storage Tent. The conditional permit will expire on June 27, 2025. Will have to be renewed at that time if the use is to continue. A new building permit is required to renew the temporary structure.
Okay, Commissioners, we have a motion, we have.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Question, comments? Hearing none, we'll call the, oh, sorry.
So the two errors that I see are both on point one. there should be a comma after 2025. And then the other one is, and Commissioner Wagner read right through it, and will have to renewed, it should be, and will have to be renewed. So just make the changes, and hopefully Commissioner Wagner, you agree with those changes, and we could vote on it. But those are sort of the errors that I saw in that.
You didn't pick up on Joom?
I got the first two. I didn't get Joom, yeah.
Thank you for that input.
Alan, can I hire you for proofreading what I write? I mean, I'm not very good at it, and I'd miss a lot of commas and periods.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Hearing none. I'll call the question. Commissioner Foley, you have your light on? Sorry, thank you. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Serious? That was only 6 minutes. Them guys got like 2 hours. Thank you.
Okay. Our next item is application 23-27P Ticket Network. Is there anyone here to represent? Please step forward. Everybody okay over there? Okay. Shh. I'm alerting police. No.
Don't fall asleep in there.
I'm sorry, please.
William Downs, Director of Facilities at Ticket Network.
Thank you.
We have a temporary permit for an animal sanctuary in South Windsor, which is kind of split in half with Manchester. We have farm on both sides and would like to continue the temporary permit for another 2 years.
Okay, no changes or nothing? Okay.
We recently lost some birds, but kind of normal this time of year.
Okay. Does that complete your presentation?
Yes.
Then at this time, we'll turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Live.
Thank you. This is a request for renewal of a 2-year temporary conditional permit to allow chickens, geese, goats on the Ticket Network property located 83 Gerber Road in our industrial zone. The reason it's a temporary conditional permit is we don't have keeping of livestock in our industrial regulations. The applicant has been coming to us since 2013, so we're over 10 years with this particular use. The chickens do provide employees with fresh eggs. They are aware of the health code requirement that doesn't allow the eggs to be used on site. I know our health inspector goes out there periodically, and she did want me to reinforce that comment that none of the product can be used on site. It's about a 2-acre area that's dedicated to the coops in a fenced-in area. You do have an aerial I think we provided which kind of shows where it is on the property. It does cross the town line. As part of the inspection for this renewal, we did ask the folks at Ticket Network to clean up some of the items out on site that had kind of collected over the last 2 years, and they cooperated fully with our requests, and I do appreciate that. Just for the record, the wording of the temporary conditional permit is that these permits may be granted by the commission for a period not to exceed 2 years. Such approval may be given after public hearing if in the judgment of the commission, the public convenience and welfare will be substantially served, and the appropriate use of neighboring property will not be substantially or permanently injured, and the traffic and other hazards will not result from such use. We have not received any complaints in our department over the last 2 years related to the keeping of animals, so we're encouraged the use to continue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Okay, commissioners, what's your pleasure? Anyone? Okay. Commissioner Cavagna?
Motion we approve application 23-27P, Ticket Network, TNC, and Animals. The 2 points that I have here is this permit, we'll have to fix that as well. This permit is to allow 64 chickens, 2 goats, and 2 geese on site. This permit will expire in 2 years on June 27th, 2025, and will have to be renewed at the time if the use is to be continued. And like I just said, I would change the word "it" to "is" in point 1. Other than that, I have no further comments.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item on our agenda is application 23-28P Youth and Family Counseling LLC. Is there anyone here to
Chairman,
represent?
the applicant is not going to be able to be with us tonight. She is a young lady who has young children at home. So I told her that it's a pretty simple renewal request, and if there's any questions, we can hold the meeting over. But it's pretty much the same that she's operated. So this is a request for renewal of a 5-year major home occupation to operate a youth and family counseling office on property located at 1512 Main Street in the A40 zone. This was originally approved in 2018, so this is the first 5-year renewal request. The approval conditions previously were the business must be operated by the homeowner. Hours of operation were Monday through Friday, 12 to 8 p.m. with some weekend appointments. I did verify those hours are still good for her. She doesn't want to change or expand any hours. They're probably a bit larger than she uses currently. And again, with this operation, we've had no concerns or expressed from any folks on Main Street. So if this application is renewed, we request the applicant return to the commission upon the 5-year expiration for another 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolin.
Thank you. I have no comments.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, I'll open the floor. Is there any questions, comments? Hearing none, motion would be in order.
I'd like to make a motion to approve application 23-28P, Youth and Family Counseling, Major Home Occupation. This approval is subject to the following conditions. The business must be operated by the homeowner. The permit will expire on June 27th, 2028, and will have to be renewed at that time. Hours of operation proposed are Monday through Friday, 12 to 8 p.m., and by appointment otherwise, on Saturday or other times. Refuse from the business cannot be disposed of with residential refuse, and adequate arrangements must be made for business refuse disposal. Finally, all freestanding signs and/or building signs require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. Major home occupation freestanding signs are limited to 2 square feet.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Questions, comments? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. We are up to application 23-17P, Leonard Retail Restaurant Site Plan. Thank you for your patience.
No problem. Good evening.
Good evening.
For the record, my name is Megan Hope. I'm an attorney with Alter & Pearson in Glastonbury. I'm here tonight representing the property owner, Glastonbury 2815 LLC, for our site plan application regarding the development of 1014 Sullivan Avenue. This site is located in the general commercial zone, and we're proposing to construct a 2,520 square foot commercial building. Also with me tonight representing the applicant is Jim Bernardino, our professional engineer, and also John Everett, our architect. The site is located on the north side of Sullivan Avenue. It's about 400 feet west of Ayers Road. It's kind of diagonally across from the Geisler supermarket site. We're about 450 feet from that entrance that you use to get into the supermarket parking lot there.
Sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you.
In 2004, the property to the west was approved and developed. That's known as 1000 to 1006 Sullivan Avenue. If you're familiar with the site, it's got 2 existing buildings, the bank and also the Salon Subway building. And I think as you'll see as we go through the plans, the intent with the new proposals to kind of integrate this new building into what's there. We always had a sense that we would put a building on this site, and I think what the engineer and the architects have done is really kind of integrated everything into one holistic site plan. So again, we're proposing that 2,520 square foot building. There is a lot line adjustment that's going to be incorporated as part of this plan. That existing lot with the building kind of wraps around our site, so we're going to be modifying the lot line to just kind of make everything a little bit more square and rectangular, but Jim will get into that as part of his presentation. When the lot line adjustment is finished, it'll be about 32,000 square feet, about 0.4 acres for the site. We are going to be maintaining that existing curb cut on Sullivan Avenue, so we're not going to be adding any other curb cuts. That existing site driveway will remain. We're going to be placing the building in the center of the site, as you can see on the plan, and we are proposing a sort of counterclockwise traffic pattern around the building. There'll be parking in the front of the building, also to the rear of the building as well. The proposed uses are a retail space on the east side, and on the west side, it's a fast food restaurant with a pickup window. What that means is that there's no ordering or anything like that that's going to happen at this location. You would use the app of the restaurant to order your food, and then you would drive to that window and pick it up. You wouldn't be ordering from the window, or you wouldn't be ordering from an order board. It's just a pickup window, so I just wanted to point that out. We are relocating the dumpsters from where they are currently. We are showing that location on the plan, sort of in between both those buildings. Those are enclosed with a dumpster enclosure, so they will be screened appropriately. You can see on the site plan that we've integrated sidewalks into the new building, and we've connected it to that building to the west with appropriate crosswalks where those sort of pedestrian pathways would be crossing over some of the site driveways. If you've been onto the site, there is a very robust existing landscape buffer on that north side, and that was from when the site was originally constructed. We're not touching that at all, and we are increasing some of the landscaping on that easterly side next to the residential neighbor as part of our proposal. That's on the landscape plans, and our client, Scott Leonard, did meet with that property owner to the east when we were going through the development process, and he requested that we added some azalea bushes to the front, which you'll see already incorporated into the landscape plan. So we did reach out to that neighbor to the east during the process. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim so we can go through some of the more technical parts of the application, and then we'll have John finish up with the architecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Jim Bernardino with CMG Engineering with offices out of Sturbridge, Massachusetts. Meg, thank you. She stole a lot of my thunder. But I'll try to give a little brief overview, a little bit more detail. In front of you is, I kind of highlighted some of the existing conditions. I'm trying to get this over here, make sure we can hear me. As Meg did mention, we have two existing properties. We are proposing a lot line adjustment. Right now, presently, the 1014 parcel is located in this rectangle here. We're looking to add the shaded area to combine it with the front. Right now, the existing lot is non-conforming. So what this does to us is allows us to get the lot up to conforming standards. Would also allow us to propose a development that's a little more consistent with today's modern designs and and offerings that the proposed buildings and uses are expected to meet with today's standards. As Meg did mention, along the rear of the property, we do have a relatively significant robust planting plan, buffer zone with a solid opaque fence. Back in 2004, a variance was issued for that to allow for a reduced buffer, so we're maintaining that. There's no alteration within that buffer zone. Likewise, back in 2004, there was a consideration of a future development in that area. Obviously, our new project isn't exactly the same as that. That's one of the main reasons why we're in front of you this evening. But a lot of the infrastructure that was designed and considered back in 2004 was for this use. So when you look and we discuss a little bit more of the site plans, you'll find that drainage, sewer, water, gas, all the utilities are existing on site for this use. So it's been well thought out back in the day so that there's really no alterations within the public way to get new services to the site. Everything is available, so impacts to the roadway networks and things of that nature for construction aspects are going to be very de minimis. Right here is just a little bit more of a highlighted shaded area. As Meg did mention, we are not altering any type of site access right now. We have 2 lanes of egress from the site, dedicated right turn and left turn lanes with a single entry lane. Right now, there's an existing curb cut. That's kind of when you pull into the site, it just goes to a manicured lawn. There'll be some minor modifications to that to allow for the construction of the proposed facility. As mentioned, is going to be just over 2,500 square feet. We're proposing to split it up into 2 tenants. One tenant being a restaurant use, and the other one at this point just a spec retail. We have 20 parking spaces dedicated to this facility, which is in excess of the minimum requirements. All of those parking spots are located on the proposed modified lot. Then there is approximately 45 additional spaces for the remaining lot, dedicated to the existing uses that are there today. We went through and did a comprehensive zone review to make sure that the modifications do not alter any type of the conformities of the existing site. So we demonstrated that in the plans. So we're not making any of the existing conditions non-conforming. So we're still compliant, both sites completely with all the regulations that the town has. As part as the site, I mentioned her, we come in access, and we do have counterclockwise circulation that would be for a pickup window, not a drive-through use, no order board. So it's more of getting a little more into the modern aspects where order online or order by the app, get a text message, your meal's ready or your order's ready, come on and pick it up. So that's the intent of the operations on that. I like to point that we do show our HVAC units in the back of the building. So we do show that. So we do have 2 primary entrance points to the front of the building. We do have deliveries and egress to the back. We do, from a grading standpoint, we are elevated slightly above the other property, but as all could, I've been doing that all night. But as we developed this proposal, we kind of built it in the best we could with the elevation changes on the property. But we do result in a very, a minor retaining wall in here, 8 feet at its peak, but then it drops off quickly on both sides to match existing grade. That'll be protected with a fence on top, obviously, for building code issues and things of that nature. As Meg did mention, we do have a comprehensive landscaping plan as part of the overall proposal. We are maintaining everything around that existing buffer that we're not talking about. There's a very large sugar maple tree out there, very large diameter. We haven't measured it at breast height, but it will be, it will remain. So that's kind of a nice aspect of the development. As you know, Mr. Leonard takes great pride in his projects and his maintenance of his properties. So that's kind of a nice element to maintain, something that's been there longer than the development has. So, with that, we prepared a comprehensive engineering package, which included erosion and sediment control plans, which upon our initial review and discussions with staff, we made some modifications to adhere to some of their recommendations and requirements that weren't satisfactorily provided in the initial submission, but subsequently we've addressed those based upon just the ongoing coordination that we've had with staff. I touched base on all the utilities. All public services are available, located on site, minimum impacts throughout the construction process. We've also developed a comprehensive set of construction details that give the direction and the intent of our design so that contractors could actually implement what's intended and what's being presented tonight to the board. Lastly, we do have a lighting plan that was submitted as well. Right now, for those that haven't been to the site or are not familiar, they have the old colonial style lantern pipes mounted about 14 feet we're going to mimic that throughout the project. So the aspects, not only with the landscaping, but the lighting will also be cohesive with the overall development. So it won't stand out as two separate properties. It will look like one cohesive development. With that, we have looked at, we have received comments from engineering staff. We provided a comprehensive response to those comments. There's one item that was recommended from the engineering staff was regarding our entrance drive-through here. What is proposed is a 30-foot drive aisle. Mr. Doolittle recommended that we consider something a little narrower width, 26 feet, maybe down to 24. In discussions with the applicant, from a regulatory standpoint, 30 feet is allowed. However, we do take considerations to Mr. Doolittle's comments about reduction of impervious, stormwater, and the like. However, the applicant would like the commission to consider allowing the 30 feet as currently designed. Where we'd like to maintain that to just, one, enhance emergency circulation in the site. We do have the ability for the larger fire apparatus, ladder trucks to come in and take that right turn in and around the site. Also, with the restaurant use, we hopefully would anticipate some traffic coming in off of the main road, coming across the front and circling around counterclockwise. With that, we will have also vehicles in the front of the site, parking perpendicular to the traveled way. We believe that the additional footage, from the 26 that's recommended up to the 30, provides some additional maneuvering, some additional sight lines and the like, just to assist with emergency access and overall circulation and safety. So, with that, we would just like the Commission's consideration on that matter as we move forward with this application. That in a nutshell is the overall site plan and how we've, developed the plan set to date. I'm going to turn over to John Everett with New England Design to go over the architecture, but I think you guys can very well picture what's going to happen there. Thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. My name is John Everett. I'm an architect with New England Design out of Mansfield, Connecticut. Just as mentioned before, we're doing a proposed mixed-use building, 2,520 square feet, and if you can see here, we have the floor plan. The building's roughly 45 feet by 56 feet. It's type 5B construction, wood frame construction. And as you can see, it's divided into the two tenants that Meg was discussing. To warn you, this is the Sullivan Ave side, the south side of the building where the main entrance is. And then on the back, we have two service entrances with the privacy fence enclosure for the two condenser units. And I think if you take a look at this photo here, this kind of tells the story. The proposed building, with a few minor exceptions, is essentially a twin to the existing mixed-use building on the adjacent property to the west. So what you see here is the mixed-use building with the salon and subway, and then the bank building further back in the background here. And again, the intent is matching architectural forms, materials, coloration, everything. Because really the design intent here is for these two buildings and our proposed building to kind of have sort of a cohesive architectural style so that this reads as a singular development. And then if I talk about building materials, I'm just going to leave this up here. Can you guys see this board down here? As I was saying, we're matching materials across the board. groups. We have a standing seam metal roof, which is this green, forest green, or Sherwood green, depending on your manufacturer. Building siding is CertainTeed vinyl siding here. It's a shingle style, 7-inch exposure to the weather. The windows are Anderson clad windows in a sand tone color. And then all the building trim is either PVC or maybe Boral true exterior siding, which is another similar material. And that would all be painted this Navajo white color that you see on that board right there. And then there's also the vinyl fencing for the enclosure for the mechanical units, which is like a beige tone to match what's already on the site. As far as building lighting goes, and you can see it in this picture here, we're matching this bracketed warehouse-style fixture. It's like a dark bronze color, dark sky compliant. And then you can see, as Jim mentioned, this is the style of the site lighting, that sort of traditional post-mounted lantern. And I think just the last item to touch on is the ground-mounted sign, which you look here at the site plan. You can see here's the bank building, the existing mixed-use building, and our proposed building. And then this is the new ground sign located here on the east side of the entrance drive. And this board here gives you a picture at the bottom of the existing sign, which is on the west side. So we're basically doing a mirror image of that on the east side. Same stone base, precast cap, green roof to match the buildings, and then the metal sign cabinet is again the same coloration as the building siding and the building trim. And that's basically it.
Okay, does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. Then at this time, we'll turn to our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
Thank you. So this is a request for site plan approval for a mixed commercial use building at 1014 Sullivan Ave in the general commercial zone. It will have a pickup window, not a drive-through window, but a pickup window. The site was originally built with a shared access and shared parking with the anticipation of another building on site. The detention basin along the frontage property did accommodate the future drainage needs of the site. They are proposing a lot line revision. It was a smaller lot originally that was left behind, so this will kind of even up the middle and divide the property into two. They provided a zoning data block which demonstrates both of the lots stand alone with zoning compliance. There were variances granted way back in 1990, reducing the buffer from a 50 to a 20-foot buffer when it was originally approved before this development. There's another proposal that actually never was built, but they also had requested a front yard variance and was granted it. They are not taking advantage of the front yard variance with this proposal, only the rear yard variance proposal. They have showed a sidewalk linkage to the sidewalk currently existing along Sullivan Ave. They're meeting our parking requirements. They're meeting our EV charging spacing requirements. I do have a comment from our building official that they'll be required to make some small, I think, adjustments to it to meet the building code as we kind of discussed with the previous application. That can be done at the time of the building permit. Public water and sewer are available onto the site. Water Pollution Control Authority will be required. There's a grease oil separator being proposed with the restaurant facility. As mentioned, the buffer requirement along the back is being met with an established buffer that already exists. They are proposing some additional landscaping along the eastern property boundary. Again, they have a residential neighbor. Although it's a general commercial zone, there's not a buffer requirement. So this is more of a screening that they're adding along the eastern boundary. There is a retaining wall, and they are going to have a field stone look to the retaining wall. You see the dumpsters being kind of collected on the back of the site. The new site lighting will match what's existing on site, the nice green gooseneck poles that are out there. They were in front of design review with all the elements, and the design review is very pleased with the proposal matching up the two buildings. The applicant is proposing a monument site, again having two separate properties. Each property will be able to have its own signage allotment, and the monument site is proposed to match what's existing out there. There are no wetlands on the property, and this doesn't rise to the level of a conservation approval because the disturbance is so low. Jeff Folger did review it for erosion sedimentation measures, and he does recommend a bond in the amount of $3,000 to ensure the erosion measures are put in place during construction. We had both the fire marshal and the fire chief reviewed the plans, so they were satisfied with the design. As mentioned, the building official wants to take a look at the EV charger at the building permit. If this application is approved, the planning department has one request, and that would be we would need new deeds to go on file describing the new property boundaries, and we would require that at the time of the Mylar filing. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. Just a few comments. As Mr. Bernardino mentioned, I recommended the center drive aisle, which is shown as 30 feet, be reduced to 24 to 26 feet. That's the width it is on the existing site in front of the existing Subway and salon. Seems to be working fine. This would save them some money, reduce the impervious surface for runoff and heat absorption, and I believe narrower drive aisle will keep traffic slower and not impact emergency services. That being said, if they want to keep it the way it is, that's fine too. Other comments are they're running the roof drains into an underground system next to the building, so I recommend another clean out be added on the southwest corner of the building where those drains come together. And lastly, WPCA review and approval is needed for this application.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioner Bernstein.
Are you able to tell us what the restaurant brand is, or give us a couple examples of some brands that use a similar business model?
Right now, there's no tenant established for the property. We're probably anticipating a sandwich shop, maybe a craft deli, things of that nature. Something that's maybe a little smaller for a restaurant type use. Many of the existing facilities, your D'Angelo's, your Subways, your Panera Breads, they all have prepay ordered apps and online ordering. You walk into these facilities, you walk up to the counter, you grab your food and you go. You don't have to wait in line, you don't have to order, you don't have to pay. This is kind of what we're establishing, but we're giving them the option of coming around, picking it up at the window, rather than getting out of their car, coming into the facility. So it's becoming more and more. I know I worked quite a bit with Chipotle in the back. They're starting to implement this type of technology, pre-order, get a text message, your order's ready, come through the window. Not to say that this is Chipotle, but it's, I don't want to say the wave of the future, but it is something that's definitely a convenience that is becoming more and more desirable to customers. So we like to have that flexibility. Even, I'm not saying Dunkin' Donuts, but Dunkin' Donuts, order on the app, you walk in, you can grab it. So it's not uncommon. It's becoming more and more common. And to have this just gives the applicants flexibility to market those other individuals maybe on a smaller scale, because obviously this isn't a very large facility. It's only 1,260 square feet. So hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of where we're
Yeah,
heading.
so I understand there's no order window, that you use the app or you call or communicate in some other way. And then people drive up to pick up their order. When you are incredibly successful, as I know you will be, I want you to convince me that we won't have a queuing problem, because I see cars backed up to Sullivan Avenue, and that scares me.
Okay, well,
Yeah, how many cars can we fit anyways?
yeah, I think we are approximately, I might even have it drawn on the plan, on the site plan. So on the site plan, wrapping around, if you don't mind, just grab that. I told you, I can do it all in.
It's fine. We're all friends here.
So on the site plan, we have queuing for
10.
And that's 10. Now that's 10, with no obstructions to any parking or any other circulation. So obviously, if it's extremely busy, we still have able to have another 4 or 5 cars before we come to the entrance driveway. However, we're not going to be anticipating that because we're not waiting for people to order. We're not waiting for the restaurant to prepare the food or whatever services they're going to be providing. So they're not waiting for that. They're only going into that line to the window when they know their order is ready. So, with that, we don't anticipate 10 queuing stacks at all. Maybe 3 or 4, and it's going to be quick. You're going to come up, stop at the window, you know your order is ready. Here you go. So there wouldn't be any cash transactions. Not exactly sure how it would work, but most likely all the pre-orders are going to be prepaid as well. So I don't anticipate stacking up with a Starbucks or a Dunkin' Donuts or anything like that. It's going to be free-flowing.
All right. That's it. Thanks.
Commissioner Cavagno?
Thank you. I do have a comment, a question, a good and a not so good thing to say. So I do want to bounce off of Commissioner Bernstein's comment about the queuing. I'll put it here. My first job was working at the South Windsor Dairy Queen right down the road, working the drive-through for a good solid 2 years, and every Friday night we'd see queuing backed up all the way to Sullivan. So I'm not sure the type of retailer or restaurant that you'll have in there. So I guess my concern is also queuing. If you guys don't think queuing will be that much of a problem compared to Dairy Queen, that's fine. It's just a quick comment I had.
Right, and we appreciate that comment, and that's why we worked with staff to really differentiate the difference between a drive-through and a drive-up. Now, a drive-through facility, I believe, requires a special permit, a special exception, through the commission, which we're not seeking. We're looking at this new program that is kind of evolving with time and with what everybody's looking to try to accomplish. So, again, professional opinion that with the pre-order, without having to wait and make the order or have cash transactions and the like, and knowing that the order is ready before anybody even pulls up to that window, will alleviate the queuing concerns.
Okay, yeah, so queuing won't be a concern then. I just want to clarify. So also on that, and again, to help alleviate any potential queuing, another thought I had was most restaurants do this now, so I guess whoever it is, I just hope they utilize DoorDash and Uber Eats. That really takes away from people using the parking, or not the parking, the queuing spaces again. So just a quick comment there. I want to go back to 10 minutes ago. I think someone had up the materials that will be used for this. Just a quick question, I guess, on this. It is made to look like the building right next to it. And I just want to make sure that they're sort of the exact same materials, down to the company making them and the SKU number, because I guess it'd be a shame if they were slightly off, if standing next to each other, looking back and forth and seeing some slight differences. I'm just curious if they're going to be the exact same or if it's a different company making them. It's just a quick question.
Yeah, well, we designed the other 2 buildings 20 years ago, and from what we can tell, they are exactly the same materials. There may be a slight variation in color due to manufacturing, but we're specifying, we've checked to see that all the materials are available, and we're specifying those same materials.
Okay, thank you. Quick comment and I'll wrap it up. I think it's good having a restaurant here. It sort of taps into the market, and I guess I speak from a perspective of a lot of high school kids, after 2 o'clock, they either take the bus home or they stay after for a club ends at 3, the late bus comes at 4, so what they do for an hour is they walk down to the nearest restaurant. Dairy Queen's too far, so a lot of them go to Subway. So I think having a restaurant there would be good for, I guess, a healthy economic market in that area, since really a lot of kids there don't have much to choose from. And sort of that area as well. I mean, you only have 2 restaurants really to choose from now that Joe Pizza has sort of gone under in that area. So I think having a restaurant there is great if that's what does come of it. Other than that, I have no comments on this application.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Viteri.
Just a question about the lunchtime and dinner time traffic with, single point of entrance. You've got Subway there, you've got the salon there, then now you're going to have another restaurant there and everything. Any concern with that? You're halfway between 2 traffic lights, and just any consideration with that?
Yes, we did consider that. We actually hired the Jim Barbaras Traffic Consulting to evaluate the proposed development. He's not here this evening. His report and findings were part of the submission. Basically, it's a de minimis impact to the surrounding area. There's a minor increase in level of service, I think, from C to D during the PM peak hours. However, everything is confined within the site. There's no impact to Sullivan Ave. There's no change in flow patterns and things of that nature. So that was definitely considered as part of the overall development. Part of the review was his expression, meaning Mr. Barbaras, that it's a benefit to us having those 2 lanes exiting. So we have that dedicated turn lane that would alleviate those delays at the exit point during those peak times. You know, obviously there'll be more delay on the left turns coming out, but we do have that dedicated right turn that would alleviate and minimize the queuing that you would experience on site. So we have taken a look at that. That's my Fisher-Price overview of the traffic report. But we did take that to serious considerations with this application.
So there's 1 lane of ingress and 2 lanes of exit?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Commissioner Foley.
I think this is a great idea. Just help me out here with, when do you get into line? Like, are you sitting in the parking lot waiting for a response that your food is ready? I've never done this, so I'm curious, like, how
Right. Exactly. It depends on time. Most people are going to, I'm going to go get a sandwich for lunch. Well, you're not going to order it in the parking lot. You're going to order it before you leave. And generally, they'll give you a time of when it's going to be complete. So we do have adequate parking, you know, that if it's not ready, they can sit and wait. And we do have, you know, adequate queuing lanes. Obviously, it's not going to get stacked up, but we have bypass lanes. So we do have great site circulation as it comes and adequate parking. So from the standpoint of what happens when you're sitting waiting for your text, some people may have to wait, others may, when they use the app, they're going to use it more than once. So they get very familiar with the site. They come, you know, some people driving off of 84, they're not going to go shop and say, oh, I'm going to download an app and go to this place I've never been before. So our customers we're hoping to be, you know, routine. And those people that do use this service are going to be hopefully our regular customers that would frequent the facility very often.
That's all.
Commissioner Wagner.
Thank you. So let's talk about the other place a queue might occur. As you come, after you've picked up your food, and you come out, and you're ready to go out onto Sullivan Avenue, there's 2 lanes. We also got another restaurant that's going to be feeding out there. It can be, it can be difficult in a situation like this where you, if there's a queue backing up in the exit area, getting out of the parking lot area of either restaurant and down into the exit lane. Has anyone looked at the kind of queue you're going to have there?
Yeah, I don't have that answer. It may be in Mr. Barbaras's report, but let me take a quick look for you on that.
Sorry?
I don't have the answer. It may be within our traffic study from Mr. Barbaras. They may have actually established what is the queue within that. So do you have that handy?
Maybe the other way of asking it, what is someone going to do if it so happens that there's a queue that's backed up past that point where they come out?
Well, okay, so obviously, we do have good circulation on the site. So obviously, safety is a concern and your queuing questions are well noted. So if we do have queuing, you know, coming out of the site, coming back, you know, potentially, you know, prohibiting a left turn coming out, we would hope that individuals would stay within the site and not block the entrance coming in. And there may be some additional signage we can consider for that, to say, you know, don't block the intersection. However, vehicles coming out, taking a right-hand turn, if they're blocked, they're going to be sitting here. I think the main concern with that blocking is blocking people coming in, meaning we don't want traffic to come out. So if we could potentially add that sign, you know, don't block intersection, cars would free flow in, and if it's backed up here, and they can't take a left into the bank or not, we do have accessibility to have a free flow around the building to get in. I would tend to, people are moving at, I don't want to say a high rate of speed, but they're coming in and they're not planning on stopping, they're planning on rolling into the site and coming in a smooth movement. If there is backup, I would anticipate most of the individuals coming into the site, if it was blocked from the bank side, they could simply circle the site and come to a parking spot. That's free and clear.
Yeah, right. I think you probably don't have anything you could change that would improve that, and you're kind of relying on people to be courteous to each other, which I think is acceptable. I know you got some input from the building official, but just to cover the EV charging, you are required to, just in the ADA only area, you're required to have one ADA space, right?
Yes. I want to say nip it in the bud, but we are providing 2 ADA spaces.
No, you don't
Well,
need,
not 2 ADA spaces. We are providing 2 EV stations.
yeah.
Right, and we are sharing an EV charging station. So we have dimensionally would both be accessible, but we understand that we may need to sign one to be actually dedicated. So we'll work with the building department at that point.
Well, here's my concern. The new building code requires you to put an EV charger in one of your ADA spaces. Okay, I don't think you want an ADA space in the back. You have one in front, which is exactly where it ought to be. So my recommendation, and you don't have to add ADA spaces to do this. Put the EV chargers, you have 3 parking spaces there. Okay, put the EV charger.
We would need to offset it to the side. We have our accessible ramp in the middle. We have to just make sure we're not going to be blocking our egress doors and things of that nature.
But anyway, I mean, you must put an EV charger on one of your ADA spaces. You only have one.
We only have one.
Right, okay.
That's correct.
So they normally come in pairs. You get a stanchion, it's got 2.
Correct.
Okay, so you would put the EV charger equipment in front there, unfortunately, and feeding one of the regular parking spaces in the ADA space. I mean, to me, that's the only solution, because it doesn't help at all to have the handicap space all the way in back. I mean, it's just not going to work for those people. So.
Yeah, I think that's something that we can definitely accommodate. We may need to finesse, curb ramps and things of that nature, just to make sure that there's adequate room for the unit itself and still maintain appropriate accessibility around and into the buildings. So.
I mean, yeah, the handicapped access also has to be able to, the person parking that car has to be able to get up to the equipment, bring it back down, yeah, right. But that's a relatively straightforward design issue. There's a lot of literature out on how to do that. It's just that I think, I know you'd like to have the EV chargers in back, and I think people.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, but I think that's not going to work for you.
And with your explanation, I apologize for saying, let me nip it in the bud. But what I was anticipating was, I know that one, you needed, one of the EV spaces had to be accessible, not necessarily the accessible handicap space.
That's the difference in the new building code. Okay, and
Exactly.
we're going to have to change our regulations to be consistent with the building code, but the building code supersedes anything else.
Yeah,
Okay.
it trumps, and by all means, we're
So,
our
I
intent is to
mean,
be compliant.
you don't need to have an EV charger on an accessible space that isn't marked handicap. It just doesn't do anything for anybody.
Right.
So again, I would recommend put that charger on the 2 spaces in front. And I think you'd be good there. And that's it.
Depending how the configuration is, we may gain a parking space in the back.
I wouldn't bother in the back. I mean,
Well, right now, we have one striped off in the back, but if we end up moving all the infrastructure to the front, we can, you know, we no longer. need
those
a
can
strip.
just be regular parking
They'll
spaces.
be regular parking spaces, exactly.
Yeah, that's not an issue. We can definitely look at that, and we'll obviously comply with the building code so we can get our building permits.
Yeah,
All set, Chief?
thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Dexter.
I'll make it short. I mean, I think we can get into this site easily. I think it's going to be getting out. Knowing there's a right turn-only lane onto Sullivan is a big plus. But there's that corner, there's people between 2 lights, you know, Sullivan's crazy.
Well, that's one of the benefits of having lights. They actually.
Provide
They provide gaps
True.
and things of that nature. And that was part of the considerations
Okay.
of all the development of the level of services and things that were incorporated into Jim Barberis's, you know, traffic evaluation.
How likely is that second space to be retail or a service? It won't be another restaurant, right?
At this point, we're anticipating it to be retail. It could very well be a restaurant, but obviously any type of restaurant would be further reviewed with the planning staff. I did take a look at what would happen to the site design. Nothing would happen to the site design. What we've done was the parking requirements for these type of restaurants is the same as the retail. With the smaller scale fast food restaurants. I believe there's a recent text amendment.
But it probably wouldn't be another drive-up, though.
It wouldn't be another drive-up. It'd be very difficult to share a window.
Right,
So
yeah.
it may be, but I don't think it would be the same type of scenario.
Okay. We need restaurants in this town, so
Yeah.
I'm not discouraging it, but it
And-
seems difficult.
And one thing that we've also considered was, with our designs for our sewer system as well, grease traps and the like, we're specifying that both buildings have accessibility to the grease trap, the exterior grease trap. So, meaning we'll have a stub connected to the exterior grease trap, so if anything does change in the future, we're not ripping up the floor, we're not ripping up the site. And we provided sizing calculations, meaning conservative, if it were to be worst-case scenario. So we wouldn't have to dig up the parking lot and put a new grease trap in as well. But obviously, any change of use would need to, be fully vetted with the staff.
Okay, Commissioner LeBlanc.
I have no comments, but thank you for giving it some architectural flair. It does look good. I think it fits the site and it fits the adjoining properties, and thank you.
Commissioner Carey.
I have no comments, but do we need to extend?
Yep. So you're making a motion to extend?
Sure, I make a motion to extend.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I can't.
Correct.
Somebody else has to.
We need a motion to extend past 10 o'clock.
I'll make a motion that we extend our regular meeting till 10:30 p.m.
We might, we do have one more applicant, which might be lengthy.
2, actually, but, oh, lengthy, okay. 11 p.m.?
If needed.
Okay. Yeah.
Second.
Okay. No problem. What's that? Yes. We have a motion to extend to possibly 11 p.m. Do we have a second?
Yeah.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Need a roll call, please. Michelle, would you like to do the roll call?
LeBlanc? We're doing a roll call.
So it's a nay.
So that's a no.
That's a nay.
Do we want to look at a different motion then? Because he's saying 10:30. Do we want a friendly amendment to the motion to be 10:30 rather than 11? Because we do need a unanimous vote.
Yeah, I believe we will still have a quorum, so if somebody has to leave before then, We do have 2 alternates here, so I don't think that'll be an issue, but I'm comfortable with the motion the way it is.
Okay, so LeBlanc,
Nay? Are you a nay?
okay, Dexter? Nay? Dexter? Wagner?
Yes.
Yay. Vasaconis?
Yes.
Foley? No. Lettieri?
Yes.
Yes.
Ivanero, yes. So I have 3 noes and 4 yays.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Were you a nay or a yes?
You
She
were-
was
yeah,
a
I'm
nay,
sorry.
yes.
I apologize, in
Okay.
5-2.
Okay,
5-2, yep.
great. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Okay, continue is me, correct? Okay. I just have a couple concerns. I know in some of the recently approved projects, we've had some issues with right turn out, and I'm just concerned about the radius on the curb, leaving the pickup window aisle. Is it adequate, Jeff, or are we gonna have issues like we had over at, say, the Costco application, where people coming out were always jumping the curb, and is there gonna be a curb right there? Because
you're
it
gonna-
shows on the left side a more gradual curb, but the one leaving the pickup window seems abrupt.
By the stop bar,
Maybe they could just work with town staff on that?
yeah, we can work on that. I mean, I asked them to make sure they had a pedestrian crossing there.
I see that.
So we want to keep that pedestrian crossing, but we'll make sure there's room for a vehicle to make that.
Okay, thank you very much.
that turn.
And if I just may, Mr. Chair.
If we could, I really need to move along on this, thank you. Is the pickup window aisle divided by paint or curb?
Paint.
Paint, thank you.
I just want to make sure to clarify that. There is a curb along the side. You can drive out here. Pickup window.
Yeah.
We have a painted delineation on the side.
Thank you for that clarification. Will there be designated spaces to wait in case somebody's order isn't ready? Okay. It's a small, okay, let that go for now. Food and products, supplies, I take it are delivered somewhere and at some time. Can you maybe briefly go over that and let me know, so I don't think that there's gonna be congestion when all of a sudden you have these semi-trucks showing up? You know, where would they park?
So Jim, if you could just quickly, maybe with your hand, show the circulation pattern and then show where the park would sort of stage and unload into the back doors.
And in the back door, we would generally have all-hour deliveries for both the restaurant and the weekend.
Okay.
So we would anticipate, we're not going to anticipate tractor trailer trucks and generally be a lot of SU-30s coming into the site, even though we can circulate the ladder truck from the site. We're anticipating more of a box refrigerated truck, 10 trucks coming in for deliveries. We would be able to come in, circulate the site, and they would key up just right here in the back of the property within the existing drive-through lane or pickup window lane. And then they would load in the back. Generally, we're doing all-hour deliveries so that there is no congestion.
Because the pickup window wouldn't be open, so nobody should really be driving through there.
It's going to be open at 11 o'clock, so deliveries will be coming in, probably in the morning, not 5 a.m., but definitely before operating hours of 11.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, any other questions, comments, concerns? Commissioner Cavagnero?
Thank you. I would like to make a motion to approve application 23-17P, Leonard Site Plan. I'll read off the standard approval modifications as follows. Prior to commencement of any site work, a meeting must be held with town staff. No building permit will be issued until the final Mylars have been filed in the town clerk's office. This application is subject to a bond in the amount of $3,000 to ensure compliance with erosion and sediment control measures. A landscape bond in the amount of $5,000 is required and must be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy if work is not completed. All bonds must be in one of the forms described in the enclosed bond policy. An as-built plan is required prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy per section 9.1.3 of the zoning regulations. All plans used in the field by the developer must bear the stamp and authorized signature of the town of South Windsor. This approval does not constitute approval of the sanitary sewer, which can only be granted by the Water Pollution Control Authority. No building permits will be issued until the Office of the State Traffic Administration certificate has been issued per Connecticut General Statute 14-311. The building street number must be included on the final plan. Pavement markings must be maintained in good condition throughout the site drives and parking areas. All freestanding signs and or building signs require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. New deeds describing the two properties shall be filed on the land records. And finally, any references to a drive-through facility on the plan should be changed to a pickup window. My only note is changing the word changes to the word changed on point 14. That is everything I have for that.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and multiple seconds. Any discussion? Questions, comments, hearing? Commissioner Wagner.
I'd like to have number 15, electric vehicle service equipment should be installed consistent with the current building code and in front of the building.
Okay.
Fine by me.
So our seconder agreed to that. Any discussion, questions, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. At this time,
Chair, do we think we're going industrial flex for a decision? Probably not. They're probably leaving.
yeah, we won't get to the industrial, but we are,
Going to hear the cussing.
are you guys leaving? Are you Kusan?
No, cussing's here.
Oh, Kusan's here, okay, good.
Good night.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next application is application 23-24P, Cusson Automotive Enterprises. Good evening, and thank you for your patience.
Good evening.
Yeah. Since we am short a commissioner now, my list is Commissioner Bernstein is next up. So I'm going to appoint you for Commissioner Foley. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name's Jay Ursary. I'm with J.R. Russo and Associates, here representing Cusson Enterprises with regard to this application. And Don Cusson is also here this evening with me, sitting right behind me here. Jim Aldrich is here. He's the general contractor that'll be building this building. And Steve Fleischman is the architect on this particular project.
So you probably remember we were here just a short time ago asking you for a zone change for this particular parcel, which is located on the west side of John Fitch Boulevard, Route 5, just south of Mascolo Road. And essentially it's 9.7 acres in size. The access, or the legal frontage, I guess is what I'd call it, is on John Fitch. It's about 102 feet, which meets your regulation. It's located between A&S Boats and the McDonald's restaurant. And as you drive by it, you would probably never know that there's a lot back there or be able to see it. It's essentially, I guess for all practical purposes, we'd call it a rear lot. It's not all that visible from Route 5, nor is it all that visible from Mascolo Road, and nor will it be after it's developed, because it's pretty much hidden from view by A&S Boats and the McDonald's restaurant from Route 5, and the two buildings on Mascolo, which are currently Cussin Automotive, which is located there now. This is an expansion of their facility, and Progressive Sheet Metal, which is located just west of Cussin, pretty much block the view of this particular parcel. So in terms of the location, that's where we are, and I'm going to step over here to the site plan, and I hope you can all still hear me okay, but the color plan that you have here basically shows the proposed development. Mascolo Road is located up here to the north, off the east over here, Route 5, John Fitch. This is the westerly side of the southbound lanes. Here is our legal frontage. A&S Boats owns all of this property here. McDonald's restaurant is here, and the gas station located right here on the corner. Customs facility is now located at this location, and Progressive Sheet Metal located here to the west. New building, two phases. Phase 1, 12,000 square feet. Phase 2, an additional 6,000 square feet of shop space. So, in terms of zoning, as you know, you were granted us the industrial zone change. We're located in the industrial zone. The use is automotive repair, truck repair, light trucks, and we just talked a little bit about access. Again, legal frontage is on Route 5, however, the access is going to be off of Mascolo Road, and it's going to be via an easement or a right-of-way over the property currently owned by Progressive Sheet Metal, and it's located right here. It's 30 feet in width, and there is an agreement in place that Don Cussin has put together with the owners of Progressive Sheet Metal, and there'll be a permanent access for right-of-way to get in and out of this particular property. It does change the zoning a little bit on the property, and this is something we talked about with staff, and I'm going to talk about 49 Mascolo, which is the Progressive property. They are going to be granting this easement, and we're going to be putting a bituminous driveway over it, so it does change the lot a little bit. And one of the concerns that your staff had, and rightly so, is, you know, how are we changing it? Is it going to make it a non-conforming lot? And actually, it doesn't. What's going to happen here is we are getting about 5,000 square feet of easement or right-of-way area. We are also conveying to Progressive 10,000 square feet that's going to be added to their lot to the rear of the parcel, and that's located right here. And it's about 40 some odd feet in width, and it's 10,000 square feet in size. So we are going to convey to them 10,000 square feet of land for the right to use for access about 5,000 square feet of their property. So how does that change that lot? Essentially, we're looking at a couple of things. We're looking at coverage, impervious coverage, and we're looking at lot coverage. Doesn't change the frontage of the lot at all. Changes the lot area by about 10,000 square feet. It's currently at 38,222. It's going to go up to 48,326. So we're adding 10,000 square feet of lot area to them. The existing impervious coverage on that lot is 64.4. With this new land, it's going to be reduced to 55.6. The lot coverage itself, which is the building, currently is 31.6, and it'll be reduced to 25% upon the conveyance of the land. So we actually are decreasing the coverage, both building and impervious, increasing the lot area, and it actually, the rear yard currently from the building, the older building, you approved an addition on that building about 3 years ago, I think. The existing building that was there for quite a few years was only 9 feet to the rear property line, and with this additional land in the back, it's going to become 50.4, so it makes it conforming. It was currently non-conforming, so it changes that situation. With regard to the zoning data on the new parcel, which is the 9.5 acres essentially at this point, the impervious coverage allowed is 65, will be at 23.6 with phase 1, 24.4 phase 2, building coverage 2.8 phase 1,
with Phase 2 4.1. And this is a one-story building. You allow up to 2 stories or 40 feet in the industrial zone. This building is a single-story building. The building itself consists of an office area that's located up here in the front. This is office staff, waiting area for somebody that might come in and be waiting for a repair. That's not going to happen very often at this particular location. And then the Phase 1 shop area is here, over 12,000 feet. The Phase 2 shop area will be an additional 6,000 feet. We have circular traffic flow around the entire site. Come in, circle the building, come through, come back out. We have customer and handicap parking here. We have customer parking here. We have parking for employees located over here. While we're talking about parking, I'm going to just go over a couple of things quickly. In your regulations, there is no parking requirements for auto repair. It doesn't show up in your table. But what it does say, and Michelle actually pointed it out, and I didn't see it until it was pointed out by your staff. It says, required to be determined by PZC, so it's your job to tell us how many parking spaces we need. We're gonna help you out. So Mr. Cussin obviously knows how many employees he's gonna have at the new facility, and he's estimating 10 for Phase 1, and 6 visitor spaces, so that's 16 spaces, and which includes an ADA space. So we're providing 16 spaces. We're also providing some overflow parking that's located here. There's an additional 14 spaces here. With the addition of Phase 2, we may need some more parking for employees, for service techs. There may be some additional office staff. That'll be able to happen over here. In terms of the parking, the handicap parking, and looking at charging stations, we are required to have charging stations, and we heard a lot of talk about it, so I'll bring it up now. We are required to have 2, and it's going to be located right here at the corner. One of them is a dedicated handicap space, which will have availability to the charger. The second one is located on the other corner here, which will be a regular parking space. So we're showing 2, one's dedicated handicap, and the other one is a regular parking stall. So we think we're comfortable with the number of spaces we have, and we have some overflow parking available as well. So we think we're in pretty good shape in terms of that. Zoning, we talked about a little bit. Utilities at this particular site are gonna come in off of Route 5. We have sewer, we have water, we have underground electric. It'll all come in here. It's gonna come into the back of the building into a utility room that's located here in the office area. And that'll give us all the required utilities that we need to operate this particular building. Generally, I wouldn't really talk to you much about heating and ventilation and air conditioning and that type of thing, but there's been a lot of discussion. In this particular building, the shop area is not air conditioned. It's only heated. It'd be a hybrid type system, typically repair garages. Some of you are probably familiar, maybe some not. They reuse oil, so they're gonna use oil, waste oil, for heating in the wintertime in the shop area. The office area is probably going to be a mini split system. It's not that big. They're very efficient. These would be located in terms of mini splits on the back side of the building over here, and that's probably going to take care of the office area. So again, shop area, no air conditioning, simply heat, and office area, heating and obviously an air conditioning. Which would probably be the mini-split type systems that you were talking about earlier, which seem to be very efficient. In fact, currently looking at one for my house, for my wife and I, and seems to be the way to go with an older home where you can't really put in conventional air without having a big mess. Seems to be the way to do it, the most easiest way and cost-effective way. And so hopefully in another few months I'll have one at my own home.
So that's a little bit about the utilities for this particular location. All the utilities are available, and they're going to come in from Route 5. In terms of stormwater and drainage, we have a conventional stormwater system here in terms of collection, catch basins, and piping. Roof water at this particular location is all piped into the drainage system. There's no water flowing over the parking lot going to catch basins. It's all tied in via pipes, and it outlets into an infiltration basin that's located here in the corner. Very sandy soils. We did test pits, very conducive to stormwater infiltration. We have a forebay, so it meets all the requirements in terms of design. It does provide detention. In fact, in this particular system, there'll be no outflow here until we get up to a 10-year storm or higher. Everything's going to go right back into the ground. We have submitted a stormwater report that Jeff Doolittle has reviewed, shows reduction in all the storm events in terms of peak flows leaving the site. So we do have a stormwater system, and we have very good soils here, so we're able to infiltrate a lot of this water back into the ground. One of the other things that's also required here, which there was some discussion in one of your other applications, is a buffer. We are located, again, to the rear of, essentially, of John Fitch, south of Mascolo. Area to the west of us is the back sides of the lots on Main Street. So we're zoned residential, and there's a buffer requirement. We're quite a ways from Main Street. We're probably the closest lot, residential lot, to the back property line to our line is about 1,900 feet. It's almost 2,000 feet. The street itself is probably more like 2,500 feet away, so there's quite a distance. Most of it's in agricultural use, and there's quite a wooded area here that's going to remain on our property, and there's a fair amount of wooded area on the ag parcels as well, because this is an area that's wetlands, and it's wooded. I'm not showing it that way, but if you'll note and look at the plan, you'll see that there's a wetland line delineated essentially at the toe of the slope along our westerly property line. So there's a buffer of deciduous mature trees there that's a little over 200 feet wide. And all of the buffer area requirement, the 50-foot buffer that we have here, is all going to remain fully vegetated. And Don Cusson took some pictures from the backs of the properties on Main Street. And I got some copies here that we can share with you. Here, there's a couple of different photos here. One's taken behind one of the houses, kind of across the street from where the post office is on Main Street. And the other, he walked into one of the backyards, somebody came over into another. So this is looking at the slope behind our site from that Main Street area. And you can see there that you can't see much. As I said, the vegetation's about 200 feet or a little wider. The entire 50-foot buffer requirement in your regulations, and this brownish colored line that I'm tracing here with my pen is the limit of that 50-foot buffer line. All of that is going to remain vegetated on this site, and actually quite a bit of it to the east of the line is also going to remain fully vegetated. There's no plans to do any clearing there at this point. Maybe someday down the road, if something else comes or Don expands even more, there might be some development in that area where we think we would probably have to look a little more at what we might be required for a buffer, but it's our feeling at this point that what we've left in terms of existing vegetation probably meets the buffer requirement. If you take a look at those pictures, there really isn't any visibility looking up through there. There's a pretty good elevation differential, and as I said, there's about 2,000 feet from the backs of the residential lots to this property line, and then our building's another, I don't know, 400 to 500 feet away from the westerly property line. So there's quite a distance here, and we think we're fairly well screened. It was actually beneficial to sit here and listen to a lot of the questions that came up in the other applications, because I can kind of go through maybe and answer some of them now. Hours of operation. This is essentially a Monday through Friday daytime operation. It's not 24/7, it's not Saturdays, it's not Sundays. Right now, Don's existing business is 7:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday, and right now the plan is that this is gonna operate the same way. He doesn't plan on doing anything different. Certainly it's allowed in your industrial zone, but right now, Monday through Friday, 7:30 to 5:30, so it's a daytime operation, so we don't expect any issues in terms of neighbors with something happening nights and weekends and that type of thing. That's not the type of operation that they have. We do have a full lighting plan, however, even though most of this is daytime activity. There are building mounted lights, everything is LED, full cutoff, sky compliant. There's, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 fixtures on the shop area of the building. There is and I'm going to show you some architecturals here in a minute. There is a canopy that surrounds the office area here. And there's soffit lighting under the canopy that washes the side of the building. And then there are pole mounted lights out of the parking lot. Again, LEDs, full cutoffs, night sky compliant, and I've got some cut sheets here. If you're interested, I'll just pass these out. I had these actually left over from design review, so you can pass those down. They're similar to the old style shoebox lights that everybody used to use years back, only they're much thinner now because the LED fixtures are obviously quite a bit different than when we were using the sodiums, high-pressure sodiums, and the other types of lights that we no longer use. So,
Jay, what are the heights of those lights?
bear with me here for 1 minute, I'm gonna tell you. I wanna say 24, but let me make sure. Dunkin' Donuts plan, if anybody wants that. I don't know how that got in here.
The height is 25 on sheet 7,
Sheet 7.
Thank you, Steve.
upper right corner.
It's 22-foot mounting height. So the fixture is 22 feet. That includes the pole and the base.
'Cause I'm looking at the table on sheet 7. At the top.
Yeah, I'm sorry, 22 plus 3, that's 25. 25-foot mounting height to the fixture. So, the one other thing that I do want to touch on a little bit that is, it's in your site plan set, is that there is some containerized outside storage that'll take place here on gravel, where the Phase 2 area of the building is located. When Phase 2 is built and that additional 6,000 feet goes in, gets moved out to here on the outside end of the loop driveway. It's storage in containers. There'll be nothing visible other than the container if you're there by the building, and it's essentially part storage. When Don has an opportunity to buy oil filters or air filters or whatever you might be able to buy at bulk and have some savings, He doesn't have the storage within the building if he can buy that kind of bulk stuff, so it goes in a container and it's outside on the outside of the building. None of it's visible unless you go into the actual facility, you would be able to see it, but you're not gonna see any of this in Route 5, you're not gonna see any of it from Mascolo Road, it's too far off the road. And quite honestly, it's a pretty nice looking building that they've put together, and I'm gonna share that with you now, but you're really not gonna see much of it unless you actually drive into the facility to get something done, because there's just not a lot of visibility here because of the location of this site. And Steve Fleischman's got his rendering, which is much better than mine. He's got better color quality. So this is the west elevation, and this is what would be facing towards Main Street. We've got the bay doors, the service area that's located here. There are a couple of man doors also that come out to the service area. And then this is the office that's located over here and the main entry into the office. And you heard me talk a little bit about a canopy, if you will, that wraps around the office area. It wraps around the west elevation, and then it wraps over the north elevation, and then there's a sign that'll be located here on the north elevation of the office area, so it's visible as you drive up and into the driveway. The roof over the office is a standing seam metal roof, as is this canopy that wraps around, and then there is a colored skirt, if you will, that also wraps around that office area. And then we've got foundation here, and then metal. Again, we're talking about a pre-engineered metal building here, and then we get up above to the roof line that's located up here. These again these are oversized, and I'm not going to be able to tell you the exact size, but these are oversized overhead doors, again, for working on larger commercial vehicles, delivery trucks and that type of thing. So, again, west elevation, north elevation, and then this is the east side. Again, the bay doors being located here, and this is the back side of the office area. One thing that I did not point out to you that I want to just show you quickly now, and I apologize because I'm probably blocking somebody's view and standing in front of them. There is, on the easterly side of the office area here, there's a patio area that's located here, which is going to have some tables. So the employees at lunchtime will be able to go outside to eat if they want to go out on the back side of the building here. There's landscaping and flowers that will be in a landscape bed around this. There is also landscaping located up the parking lot. We've got trees here, 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 here on the islands around the building, office area, and then also over here on the outside, and also over here. There is a landscaping schedule that's located up here. We believe we meet the requirements within the regulation in terms of landscape requirements within the parking areas. And if I didn't tell you, these areas here are the parking for the vehicles to be serviced. So we've got the bay doors, vehicles to be serviced, vehicles to be serviced, or vehicles that have been serviced that are there getting ready to get picked up and go back out. So that's a basic kind of quick overview of the application. And seeing as the time, I heard the chair say that I was going to be lengthy, and I'm trying not to be lengthy because I know it's late and everybody wants to go home, including me. So unless, and I'm sure there are some questions, and I don't know if Don has anything he wants to say. You heard him, yeah, and Don's been here before, and you've heard him when during the zone change application. He's been in town for over 30 years. Business is doing well, needs to expand, wants to stay obviously in South Windsor, right where he's at, and looking forward to being able to put up a new facility and expand his business right here in South Windsor, where he's been doing very well for decades. So that said, that's all I have for you, and I'm sure there's some questions.
Okay, thank you very much.
I'll
At
be-
this time,
I'll be brief.
We'll turn to our town staff, our Director of Planning, Michelle Light.
So this is a request for site plan approval for, it's actually a two-phase project, 12,000 square feet in Phase 1 with 5,000 square feet in Phase 2 for automotive repairs, 753 John Fitch Boulevard in the I zone. As been indicated, there will be a sole access to the property through an access easement at 49 Mascola Road, which is a progressive sheet metal site. Included in this plan is some swapping of land and some zoning data tables to demonstrate zoning compliance with the new addition on the 49 Mascola Road. It looks like we're reducing impervious and building coverage, so that's great news on that. The plan is in compliant with related to our EV charging stations. Provisions are being made for 2. Landscaping, interior landscaping requirements are being met. As mentioned, there is a 50-foot buffer requirement. This did come in prior to the adoption of the new regulations, so it's subject to a 50-foot buffer, and the automotive use is an as-of-right use. Those are 2 changes subsequent to this application. The buffer is being handled with existing vegetation. I did receive a comment from the abutter to the west, the Shepherd family, stating they have no objection to the design as presented. The closest property I scaled to be a house to be about 2,500 feet to Main Street, residential house. So there is quite a distance and quite a bit of farmland in between and regulated wetlands too. So I think the buffer as it stands is probably designed okay for now. There's some outdoor lighting shown around the parking areas with some wall pack lightings. Design Review did review the proposal and they were satisfied with the design as presented. I think we were all a little impressed with the nice additions to this building, being that it's not going to be too visible from too many places. But as we were told, Don likes to keep his business very nice and clean for his customers. So we will benefit from a nice new building going in back there. It should be noted that outdoor storage would be permitted in the zone. However, they're not proposing anything other than these container trucks. And if they were, it would just have to be screened from any public ways. You do have a very quick shot into the site from John Fitch Boulevard. I don't really think you're going to see too much activity back there, but there is opportunity for some additional arborvitae screening or whatnot if it becomes necessary in that area there. There are regulated wetlands on site. The applicant did receive wetlands approval on June 21st. They are looking for a couple bonds, a $10,000 erosion sedimentation bond, $25,000 bond for installation of stormwater structures. Public water and sewer are available. As mentioned, utilities are coming in from Route 5. WPCA approval is required. The only comment as far as the site plan modification or any additional requests, again, is similar with the other application. We'll need new deeds for the rewriting of the property boundaries with the lot line revisions as part of the Mylar filing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll turn to our town engineer, Jeff Doolittle.
Thank you. I'll also try and be brief. So the one comment I want to make is on this property is an existing small stormwater management basin for McDonald's. I honestly don't remember seeing that before this application came in. Didn't come up in previous dealings with McDonald's. It's the responsibility of McDonald's to maintain it, but as I said, it's on this property. So my comment is that needs to be maintained. It's very much overgrown, hasn't been touched in a long time, needs to be maintained. I understand that's not this applicant's responsibility, but I wanted to make that comment. The sanitary sewer line will go out to Route 5. The recommendation is being to put in a pump system because of the elevation difference. And the last section of that pressure or force main would be a gravity line that drains into the existing manhole out near Route 5. Calculations for the sewer flows should be provided in the pump station. The pump station should have access to an external generator or be wired into an on-site generator. Some details regarding the concrete dumpster pad and sidewalks need to be updated. WPCA review and approval is needed for this application. And the fire marshal mentioned today, actually, he may have some extra requirements regards to the site in terms of a hydrant on site because of the distance from the road. So you should consult with the fire marshal on those requirements.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, we'll turn to commissioners. Commissioners, any issues? Commissioner Bernstein or Commissioner Carey?
No, I'm good.
LeBlanc? Dexter?
Nothing?
Wagner?
How many parking spaces will you have?
Currently, adjacent to the building, we are showing 16 spaces, and then we have 14, and we're calling them overflow spaces that are located here. But the area here, and here, there are 16 spaces provided there.
Okay, so you got about 30 spaces. I think, first of all, it looks like your EV charging is consistent with the new building code because you have an actual restricted handicap space with a charger, okay. However, I think our regulations are going to require you to have a EV-ready space somewhere in there. So probably just the next space over a conduit.
We're actually providing two. EV charging for two spaces, the handicap dedicated space and a regular space that's located here.
Right, but if you look at the parking requirements, I think you need one more EV-ready, not.
Excuse me?
So you got to provide some wires, an extra 12 feet of wire somewhere.
Okay, we'll make note of that.
I think this is a really cleverly designed project, by the way. Your frontage is on Route 5. You're coming, you're almost totally hidden. Is your marketing coming from word of mouth and advertising, or are you going to rely on people knowing that you're, driving by? Because I'm thinking maybe you need a sign on the Route 5 or something.
Actually, the signage, and we're not showing it yet, but the signage would be out here on Mascolo at the entryway. As I said, Don's been in business for decades, and he's got an established clientele that he's currently servicing, and he's just basically run out of space. Obviously, it will have some new customers, but there's no plans for signage on Route 5 because there's no way to get in there.
Okay.
So
Anyway, I love this project. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Viteri?
No comment. I'm sorry, one quick question. The front of the office building is going to be facing Main Street as opposed to Route 5?
No, it's actually two-sided. Let me go back to that. So if we look at the elevations, and if we think about coming in from Mascolo, that would be the north elevation, and that's the part that will have the sign, which is located right here on the building as you come in the driveway. So the northerly elevation, or the part facing Mascolo, is essentially a front of the office area, as well as the west side that's located over here, and that faces Main Street. But
Main Street,
the actual
okay.
entrance and the sign is here on that north elevation.
Okay,
But it's kind of a two-sided office area, if you will.
thank you.
Commissioner Cavagnero?
No comment.
Commissioner Bernstein?
One question, and Mr. Cussin, while you're up, it's for you. So this is a very ambitious project, and I'm curious, are you adding services, or is this the result of just organic growth?
So, good question. It is the result of organic work. We have an overflow lot that we currently use on South Satellite Road, which is overflowing. Our backlog of commercial repair is what's driving this. Physically, we don't have any more room to allow vehicles to park and/or go to work on. So this is really going to be, all our commercial work is going to go over there. The current building will maintain as the automotive and the small vehicle repair service center. So both areas, it is all custom automotive, but automotive in the front, heavy duty in the back, basically.
Excellent, very admirable.
If you look at the construction and the colors, we are trying to mimic what we currently have. That's why we
Terrific. Thank you. Good luck.
Someone had to be last too, right?
Okay, and I don't have any questions or comments. Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
I move we approve application 23-24P, Custom Automotive Site Plan. Standard approval modifications are as follows. Prior to commencement of any site work, a meeting must be held with town staff. No building permit will be issued until the final Mylars have been filed in the town clerk's office. This application is subject to the conditions of approval of the Inland Wetlands Agency Conservation Commission, including bonds in the amount of $10,000 to ensure compliance with the erosion and sediment control measures and $25,000 to ensure establishment of stormwater system. A landscape bond in the amount of $3,000 is required and must be submitted prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy if work is not completed. All bonds must be in the forms described in closed bond policy. An as-built plan is required prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy per section 9.1.3 of the zoning regulations. All plans used in the field by the developer must bear the stamp and authorized signature of the town of South Windsor. This approval does not constitute approval of the sanitary sewer, which can only be granted by the Water Pollution Control Authority. No building permits will be issued until the Office of State Traffic Administration certificate has been issued per Connecticut General Statutes 14-311. The building street number must be included on the final plan. Pavement markings must be maintained in good condition through the site drives and parking areas. All freestanding signs and/or building signs require the issuance of a sign permit before they are erected. And finally, engineering comments stated 6-22-27 must be incorporated into the final plans. Again, my only note here is the last point. I'm not sure if the year is 2027. I would assume the year is 2023.
No, it's 27. Thank you. And if we could add the deed, about the deed, please. New deeds to be filed.
Yes, and I'll add that onto the motion as well.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, discussion? Do we also need to have engineering comments of June 27th, 23 included in that also? So is that, you're fine with that, Alan?
I am, yes.
And whoever seconded it? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other questions, comments, Commissioner Wagner?
Yeah, I think we should say that an additional EV-ready space is required
For number 14?
for 14 or 15, wherever we're.
Okay. Okay, and you're both good with that?
I agree.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? If not, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Good luck. Okay, we're not going to talk about, we don't have time for the industrial flex space, which is application 23-11P, but I would like to get into the executive session.
Okay. The other thing on the home occupation, do you want to put that on? If you have any comments on that or questions on that?
They're looking for that soon. Yeah, okay, let's take care of that, and if we have to push the executive session back.
So essentially what we have is our home occupation regulation in 1994 took it and said that you could do all major home occupations in every zone, right? With the exception of your design residence zone and your multifamily zone. We did not codify our, there's been 2 iterations of zoning regulations since 1994, and the latest set picked up something in the use table that is not correct. And so the memo I gave you kind of called out what our use table says, and really what our use table really should say, reflecting the regulation that we adopted back in 1994. It was recently brought to our attention that our use table was wrong. I did speak with the town attorney. With codification of zoning regulations, this happens, I don't want to say frequently, but you do have conflicts and whatever. And he said by providing the minutes of the original adoption of the regulation and proposing a change, it's something that could be done administratively, but it's something that the commission be made aware of and agree to. So I'd like to fix the regulations. We're about ready to put a final edition put out with all our new text changes that we have. I'd like to correct this in the use table. Again, the practice has been, since we put this regulation in place in 1993, is to allow both major and minor home occupations in all our single-family residential zones. Minor home occupations are limited, in the design residence in the multifamily zones, you can't do a major home occupation there. We've consistently applied that over the last 30 years. So it really can be just a consensus of the commission that you agree that the use table should be corrected, and we can make that change.
Consensus, right?
Consensus.
You can do it by vote, you can do it by consensus. It's an acknowledgement on the record that we're correcting it, is really what we're looking for.
Let's do it by motion, just to make it clean cut.
Okay, I move that we approve the changes in the the Director of Planning's memo of June 22nd, 2023 to address administrative zoning correction for home occupations.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I think it needs to be done. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion passes unanimously. And Commissioner Carey, did you vote on that? I'm seating you for Commissioner LeBlanc. Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Our bylaws state we got to be done by 11, right? I thought the building closes or whatever. No? Okay.
We've been here before past midnight.
Okay. Then we should have a motion to go into executive session, and who is going to partake in that?
Space, what are we doing?
I'll end up putting it on our next agenda.
Okay, that's, just want to make sure.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so
I'd like to make a motion that we move into executive session with all seated members, town planner, and town engineer.
okay, we have motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have motion and a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion passes. At least one of us gets to go home.